kids. It's time to get some SML podcast all up in that.
What's up, everybody? This is the SML Podcast. I am your host, Joe. Joining as usual, Cole. How are you doing?
It is not as usual. I'm not usually here this time of the week.
Yeah,
except for like the last couple weeks, you guys drafted me to.
Well, you've been.
Yeah.
Plus, it's a special occasion. We got
It
guests.
is.
Pernell's here too. Pernell, how are you doing?
Fucking Pernell.
I'm going to just a better suggestion to not go to the gym, so I did that, and I am running on some kind of fumes here. But
Well, somebody's got to do the laundry.
well, I already did the laundry in anticipation of this magical event. And for the record, we've been doing this for a couple of weeks. It is as usual now.
I guess now, yeah.
Consistent. It's been
I still haven't adjusted to my extra show in the week, eating up my non-existent free time.
Oh, yeah, you're
That's
really
what
busy Tuesday.
when you're sitting up there between your holler. I mean, I guess
Look,
that happens to folks. They just
Jeez.
kind of lose track of events and time. I mean,
No one's
what is-
going to get that joke, Pernell.
somebody has to man the sunshine pump, okay?
Dear God, that's probably a real thing too.
Oh, Lord. If you want more information on these jokes, visit our Patreon at patreon.com/the SML podcast. But we have actual guests this week. It's been a while, but it's good to have some guests on the show. Dan and Jaime from Ridiculous Games. How are you guys doing?
Good.
Great,
And
thank
by
you.
the yeah, thank you. And by the way, I'm Jaime, not Jaime.
Jaime. Ah,
Jaime. A little more ethnic for you guys. There you go.
Jaime. Well, I feel like a dick now. I thought it was an easy one.
You know what? You should. You should.
You know, we
Bam!
got to give Joe credit because it's been a few interviews since he fucked up a name so badly. So that he did
I mean,
it,
look
he
at
was
the
like
spelling.
being
You
all
got to
out
give
on
me
it.
a break.
He got me.
I know. I get that all the time. At this point, I'm basically Jamie. I don't really care anymore. It's all good.
Wait, so your name is spelled like Jamie, but it's pronounced Jaime?
No, here's the deal. In South America or Mexico or whatever, that's the way you spell Jaime. But you come over here and it gets all screwed up, right? So now
Fucking
Jamie's
Americans.
everybody. So, damn America. Exactly. America.
They needed an
Marca.
excuse. They needed an excuse to use Y in something else. That's what that was about.
Yeah, that's probably a good call.
Dan, did I get your name right?
Yes, it's pretty easy compared to Jaime's.
You never know.
I'm a
I
little
thought
sad that he didn't just go, no, it's Han, you asshole.
No, I'm actually about to say, actually, my name is Percival. Way to really botch that, dude. Jesus crap.
Now, I love your name, Dan Kingdom. That is such a royal name.
Yes, I really can't take credit for it. That goes to my father.
of the kingdoms.
Indeed.
So you guys are here to talk about your brand new game, Day and Night. It just launched on the Nintendo Switch. For the people who don't know what this game is, give us the sales pitch.
Dan, you know what? Dan Kingdom, by the way, he was the gentleman who is the brains behind this whole thing. So Dan, if you want to go and handle this one, go for it, my friend.
Sure. Well, it's very much kind of a love letter to classic old puzzle games, falling block puzzle games. But we wanted to give it a bit of a spin, bit of an update. So we came up with this pretty unique time of day mechanic that changes the rules as you play. But it's very much designed for people who love those old school Tetris style columns, Puyo Puyo games of yore.
Yeah, I've been having a blast with this game. The day-night mechanic, like the first time I played it and the tutorial started and it's like connect blocks together. I'm like, oh, this is going to be easy. Then they throw in another color. I'm like, oh God, this is going to be simple. And then it changes to night and I'm like, fuck. This changed the game.
It definitely adds that extra. Oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to say it definitely adds that extra element, right? Because I remember when Dan was first, kind of designing and talking about it, I kind of thought the same thing. I thought, oh, it's going to be kind of a Tetris-y kind of game. But once I actually got my hands on it and I started realizing, oh, crap, the night and day stuff really makes it so that I have to think about my next moves in advance, that kind of throws the whole thing off, right? It just really adds an extra element to it.
Yeah, and it's very interesting watching people play the tutorial, because you're right, as you say, we deliberately start you off very slowly. We just give you a couple of blocks. We just give you one time state to think about. And you watch people play and you can see them going like, oh, okay, I see what you're doing here. That's cute. And then we introduce both time states at the same time, and you can see them sit up and go, oh, wait a minute. Oh, this is actually a lot more interesting than I was expecting.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very much designed around that desire to kind of make you play in the now, think about the blocks that you can match when, say, your daytime, and all you can match are the day blocks. But plan for tomorrow, because once you've collected enough day blocks and you twist that time state around to night, all the blocks that you couldn't do anything with that were just filling up space suddenly turn on. And so if you play strategically, you can plan for that time change. You can stack night blocks in large groups, hit that time change, and then clear massive amounts of the screen in one go. But obviously, once you do that, you're at the start of the next cycle, and all the day blocks now start piling up, and you have to kind of think ahead again.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Pernell. It's such an interesting concept, because like when you first, even on that interesting tutorial bit, it makes you think. At first I was like, oh, I guess even though there's day and night, it's only going to be day blocks during the day and night during the night. And then when they started combining the two, and I realized I could just get that massive clear, it felt great. And it was I think it's the addition of having the race with the other person to clear your side fastest to get the clear that canal or whatnot, or I just call it the precious fluids, because I don't know what it is. But to clear that precious fluid vial out, it is a fantastic sense of like urgency that's constantly ticking at you. It's obviously a great feeling. Like
it was designed largely around that, pretty much around that sensation. So as a designer, you usually kind of write yourself down a couple of core values that you want to stick to as you're designing the game. And the two that I had right from the beginning was rising panic, which is, during the daytime, you can collect and remove day blocks, but the night blocks are going to cause you grief. They're going to stack up. They're going to get in your way. But if you can play smart and plan for the future and survive long enough and trigger that time change, you then get that second value, which is sudden relief. You can clear off massive amounts of the screen, but then you're at the start of the cycle all over again, and you just loop round and round that state.
And there's like another element there that I thought about too, which is that sometimes you'll get a block that has some day blocks and some night blocks. And as you're trying to think of how to place it, you might see a guaranteed day clear in the daytime that you can just use right then and there. Get rid of some blocks. But by placing it in the way that would clear those day blocks, you kind of left the remains looking kind of shabby. Like you're basically getting the quick hit in exchange for a delayed clear in the future. Whereas you can go, maybe it's better to take those non-usable blocks and put them in a position that'll make them easier to get rid of, and I'll just get a day block later to take care of the rest of this stuff over here. And I've had that happen to me more than a few times. And of course you can't think about it too long, because again, you're trying to race to clear all the stuff off before the other guy does. Though I do have a question, because I feel like I noticed it sometimes and other times I didn't. So I know that if you clear the precious fluids before the other player does, they get garbage blocks at the bottom of their screen, which forcibly pushes them up, and there's no way to get rid of them. However, I feel like there were a couple of times where I also noticed that the person who cleared theirs out got the day-night progression change, but the other person didn't. Was that just coincidence, or is that actually a thing?
Well, it would depend which game mode you're playing in. In the core game mode versus, then the first person to trigger a time change to fill up the vial at the bottom of the screen will change time for both players. The player that fails to trigger a time change will be punished by having what we call the steel block row appear at the bottom, which, as you say, pushes them up, reduces their screen space. So the first person to trigger time will always get an advantage over the other player by reducing their screen space slightly.
Okay. So it must have been just like probably one of the scenarios I was playing in the story mode that did that.
Yes, yeah, that's probably what it was, because we do have other game modes outside of the core game mode, to say like story mode, which has deliberately it twists certain elements of the core rule set and the way that the game plays.
Now, one thing I want to inquire about. I'm sorry, go ahead, Joe.
I was going to say, I noticed in Act 2 of the story mode, I've mostly been playing just against computer and horribly failing at the dares, but the story mode, I noticed in Act 2, it was always nighttime. Even when the night cycle ended and it switched over, it would stay nighttime. Is that one of the intended features?
Yeah. Yeah, so the story is deliberately a kind of a way for us to shake up certain things. You say, like, the second story, Witch in the Well, it always takes place at night because the story is set at night in a forest. So we use a lot of the tool sets to kind of increase the challenge of the game, but also give certain stories their own different flavor. So we change the difficulty curve, we change the time. Sometimes it stays permanently in one season because we also move through seasons during regular play based off the amount of time that you're spending in game. So there's lots of different tool sets we can kind of dip into to make each story different and more challenging.
And by the way, you haven't gotten the chance to even talk about the season blocks, right, Dan?
Yeah,
I mean,
that's true. Yes,
I was about to totally try to lead us into that because in addition to what we've already talked about, there's two things I wanted to touch on. One being just the general, theme that you use for the entire game, and then after that, I was going to bring up the season blocks. Mm-hmm. But so to me, the theme of the game is children on stage performing plays, which I honestly found to be extremely charming. It's I will admit this week has been a good week for youthful games, I'll call them, and this one is definitely quite on the pedestal for that. But I was curious as to what led you guys down the road to want to go with that theme. Like, what was the charge for that?
It's an interesting mashup because obviously, I mean, fundamentally there are two core aesthetic elements and themes for the game. One being the whole day-night cycle, and then a children's school play, which obviously go together so well. And it's tricky actually to really think back to when certain things kind of crept into the game, because it was initially the very first design I did for the game. Actually, I came up with the core concept nearly 20 years ago.
Whoa!
The actual the base mechanic of this binary state where you can only collect some blocks now, and you have to wait to collect the rest of the blocks. And that kind of, it stayed in my head like that for a good amount of time. And then I kind of revisited it not too long ago, which is when we kind of started redeveloping it and redesigning in earnest for the Switch. But it started off purely as an iOS game in what is now survival mode. So it was just a single player game. It was just a full screen day or night, depending on which mode you were in. And then when we started looking at Switch, we went for the horizontal split screen and the versus mode. The two-player head-to-head kind of took prominence. But the kind of the core look of it came from a very simple place, which was just I had an initial backdrop, which was this day and night cycle, which I, for whatever reason, designed as this canvas stage-like backdrop. And once we had that in place, we really wanted to kind of double down on that. So we wouldn't have any what we call like magic UI elements too much, nothing kind of just free floating. So everything kind of had to start looking like it was on stage. All the trees that turn around, the blocks, everything had this crafted kind of aesthetic to it. And once we had versus mode in play, we didn't initially have any of the kids or the CPU characters in the game. But once the versus element came in, it became very clear very early on that we wanted to have some kind of visual element for you to look at and shout at and triumph over when you beat it. So we just placed, actually, I think initially the big tree prop, which is kind of a major element of the game now, which rotates around on stage when you move through the seasons and change time. That was originally just stitched into the canvas backdrop, so it rotated around with the sky. And I tested putting the kids in just floating magic boxes, pretty much in the position as they are now. But it clashed with that element of it didn't look like they were actually on set. So we brought the tree into the foreground, made it a prop, cut the holes out, put the kids in the tree. And that kind of just, it snowballed one after the other, always having props on stage, trying to make them feel physical, clouds hanging on strings, stuff like that. And it kind of came to define the experience over the whole length of development, that defined the feel of the sound effects. We wanted them to sound very practical. We didn't want them to sound synthetic or digital. And the music, we wanted to make it feel like it was being performed by an unseen orchestra, off stage.
Is that why you went with classical?
Yeah, which, by the way, I was going to mention, Dan and everybody else, at least, on my end, that's one of my favorite elements of the game. I love the classical music. I've been talking to Dan about that for a while now. I thought he made a really good choice there. I was such a giant fan, and still am, of Looney Tunes from way back in the day, and they always featured classical music. So every time I hear those songs in the game, it just automatically puts a smile on my face, right? And it just works at least for me, it works really, really well with the game.
Oh, definitely not just for you. Like, I'm in the same boat, because one thing that always comes to mind for me, and it comes up when folks are discussing musical taste with me in general. People ask the generic question, so what kind of music do you like? And people typically say, whatever, everything.
Right. Right.
But if you were to say, I like classical music, you might occasionally get that one person goes, oh, so what are your favorite pieces? And I'm like, I don't freaking know.
I just like listening to it.
Yeah, and
I don't know the name of it. I just know they used it for Monty Python's theme.
That's exactly right.
And that's the trick, too. Yeah, it's like most of our classical music consumption came from things like Looney Tunes or movies that throw it in at very optimal scenes, things like that. So I love classical. You can get me, I have the Planets upstairs on CD, and that's how I learned that half of the tracks I liked are from the Planets. But once you put it into something that is going to be consumed by someone, it immediately clicks. Regardless if you know what they are, what their names are, it doesn't matter. It just sounds great there. So to hear it in this game, it made me feel like the soundtrack was familiar.
Right.
Even if I couldn't outright tell you, I got it from this. This is a Beethoven piece. I don't freaking know, but it doesn't matter. It just
and it immediately gives you a certain tone and a vibe to the whole performance as well. It kind of ties it into everything else.
Mm-hmm.
And the other big important thing for it as well is because you're going to hear it a lot as you play. So it has to be something that, every time a new bit of music starts, we don't want you to kind of, roll your eyes and go to options and turn off the music. We want you to be kind of tapping along and humming along to it as you're playing.
Yeah, which I found myself doing a couple of times for sure.
Yeah, because I can tell you, like, it may not be for everybody, but I'm one of those people where if you were to tell me, oh yeah, just turn the music off and play it in silence, I'm going to tell you to go to hell. Because
you know what's funny, and in no way am I saying anything negative other than I remember I was doing some videos. I was putting together some videos for the game itself recently, and I remember in the videos I had to turn down the music, and I was playing it without the music, and it was still fun. But man, it's just not the same. It's like the music just immediately puts a smile on my face, right? It just kind of adds to the whole thing. It's fantastic. It works really well.
Like it adds. There's like a certain element of the soul of the overall product that comes from the OST.
At least to me, absolutely, 1,000,000%.
So, and I've honestly been very much enjoying it in that regard. So, I'm very much glad you guys made the decision to throw that in there as the musical context. But now the follow-up question to this, though, we were talking earlier about the gameplay structure and how you have the day, the night, and you have day blocks and night blocks and what have you. But one interesting thing that we didn't talk about was two different types of things, which are just general hazard blocks and the season blocks. Yes. And I got to say, before I even ask you about anything related to them, that the ice block is the biggest ingenious pain in the ass. It's the biggest ingenious pain in the ass, I swear. It completely, intentionally, and intelligently breaks whatever flow you've gotten accustomed to with dropping block games over the years. Because, you just drop. It's like you'll see it, and you still can't stop yourself.
Isn't it the worst feeling when it happens, and you're like, I could have stopped that from happening, but I didn't. Like, it's so frustrating.
It's amazing.
That's what Pernell says. You see the block, and you still press the up button, knowing it's going to happen, and then it happens, and you're confused.
Yes.
Why did that happen?
And then it's kind of one of those moments where it's the whole no kind of moment, right? Like,
time slows down.
It's interesting because that whole process ties very much into a very important part when it comes to design and when you're playing a game, because you want the player, when they do something like that, drop a block that's going to punish them in some way. You have to make sure that they did see it coming, that the moment that it happens, they 100% acknowledge, oh, that was on me. I need to do better next time.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you don't, Well, the flip side of that is that if you have a game that just kind of suddenly springs that on you by surprise, then your reaction is, "What the hell was that?" And you blame the game. You don't take ownership of the error, which is absolutely pivotal.
Hey, real quick, I want to do a quick aside. So I'm looking at the Twitch channel right now, and I see Moobot has basically said, "Go buy Day and Night on the Nintendo Switch right now, or I swear to God, I'll cut you so flippin' hard." And you know what? I want to tell you, Moobot, I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
I absolutely appreciate that. So thank you.
I figure you guys are on. I'll set up a Moobot command for you guys that links to the store page and a nice friendly message to encourage people to buy the game.
That is fantastic.
So actually, I have to ask you guys, because obviously you've stumbled onto the wrath of the ice block. Have you discovered how to use it as a tool instead of a punishment?
Yes and no. So if I have some, if I'm thinking about this in the right way, so I might have some stuff below the screen that I might want to hold on to for a bit of time, or if it's not in what I would consider to be a very efficient layout of stuff to have, like the ice block can be good to give you a fresh, clean start. If you're not too high up on the screen, you can just like, okay, I'm going to build from this and get some clears in before the ice ultimately melts. But I have this feeling you have a different idea in mind, and I need to hear it.
So as you mentioned earlier, we have additional blocks as well as the time blocks, day and night blocks, of which there are 2 of each. So we have
because 4 blocks isn't hard enough. 4 blocks isn't complicated enough with this game.
Well, it's interesting. Like, we were at a development stage where all we had was that for a good chunk of time, and the gameplay was what I would describe it as, it was functional. Everything worked on a mechanical level, but it wasn't fun because there was nothing that was pushing you, and there was nothing that you were having to really pay attention to and manage. So these special blocks, of which are stone block, bomb block, ice block, and black hole, were kind of added to shake stuff up, because we also have we also have another system, which is the drop meter in the middle of the screen, and that's pushing you to drop blocks very fast, to build that up, to drop junk onto your opponent to give yourself an advantage. So once we had that system in place, I needed something that would then give you grief if you weren't watching the block queue and you were just dropping blocks, hell for leather. So that's where the special blocks come in, because they're dual state. If you drop them in one mode, if you hard drop them, they're going to activate like a bomb's going to blow up. If you soft drop it, it will land but won't detonate. The ice block will freeze a horizontal line if you hard drop it, and it will just sit there and slowly melt away if you soft drop it. So those blocks are put in to really make you kind of keep paying attention to the block queue to make sure that you weren't going to, drop blocks and paint yourself into a corner. But then once we also then added in the seasons, so every time you rotate through day and night, you rotate also through the seasons. So you move through spring, summer, autumn, and winter. And in each of those states, there's an additional block added to the game, which is a seasonal block matching those seasons. You can only collect them during that state, so you can only collect spring during springtime. And if you match and collect those, you launch a very specific attack on your opponent. So this ties into the ice block, because if you get a seed block from a spring collection dropped on you and it grows a flower up through your blocks, you've got a couple of options. You can try and play around it, which is difficult. You can tactically quick drop or hard drop a stone block down onto the seed, which is it's a great way to kind of clear it out. But obviously the problem with that is that any blocks that the flower has grown up through are going to be destroyed in the process. Yeah. You can drop a bomb near the seed, and that will take out the seed, but it's also going to destroy other blocks. It might cause you grief if you've been setting up combos for an oncoming time change. The best tactical way to deal with a flower is to drop an ice block down and freeze the seed, because that will revert everything that was flower back to normal game blocks.
Oh, so like if I put the ice block next to the seed,
so that some of the best ways I've seen people play it is they will deliberately drop a stone block on the very edge of the screen, drill a hole all the way down to the bottom, and then drop an ice block, hard drop it deliberately down that channel, flash freeze across, and take out that seed. Obviously, the seed will only be frozen for a certain amount of time because ice melts after a certain amount of time has passed, but it suddenly gives you back all of those blocks that were consumed by the flower.
You can get rid of them so that when the ice is gone, there might not be anything for the flower to grow up through.
Exactly. And it's interesting how
it might cause some chains on its own, too.
Indeed. And just by that, I mean, we never really designed it that way, but once we had one system in place, it led to another system. And what initially were just a penalty system, the special blocks, suddenly we realized, you can use these tactically. You can use a stone block and quick drop it and just take out a tower if you're getting too close to the top. You can drill down to a bomb that's sitting down at the bottom and detonate it without having to reach it physically and set up a chain reaction, or you can use the ice block to take out seeds. So everything kind of loops around in of itself. Everything kind of seems initially to maybe be, removed from one another, but they all kind of actually feed into each other.
I have to say, I agree with that because, and I was going to ask if this was what was intended because I had a question related to that statement, which is, I'm pretty sure it's summer, where when the summer attack kicks in, the meteors fly from the opponent's side to your side and burn blocks, and the ignited blocks slowly eat through and burn through stuff and turns them to ash. So one thing I have experienced, which I don't think it's coincidence, is I've slow dropped an ice block on top of a fire block, and it puts out the fire.
It does, yes.
And I was like, oh, that's fantastic. I need that.
But the interesting, did you notice when you did that, it didn't remove the fire block, it just put it out. So the fire block remains. Now, if you move into autumn and that fire block is still there and someone fires fireworks at you, there's a very good chance, we've designed it this way, that fireworks will target that inactive fire block and reignite it, and it will start.
That's messed up, Dan. That's
messed up. I did not know that, but it is very cruel and very interesting to hear.
It's the same thing we actually did with the seed and the flower. So if a seed lands on your side, it will grow a flower up through your blocks. That will only happen in springtime. If you move into summer and the flower is still there, it will stop growing, but it will remain on screen. If you move into autumn and you still haven't done anything about it, the flower will wither, and then when you move into wintertime, that flower will disintegrate and go away, but the seed remains. And if that seed survives all the way around to the next spring, it will grow a new flower up through the blocks.
That is really cool. See, I was really forcing myself to try to clear those things out, so I don't think I ever let it get that far. But
as you should do, because you don't want those to hang around. But there are systems in place to kind of react to certain events happening like that.
It's been, honestly, I think that all those elements combined are a large part of what makes this game so special, in the sense that there are a lot of moving parts that are constantly keeping you on your toes. Like, if you play, say, for example, the Puzzle Fighter can get chaotic, but at its core, you're only looking for the colored gems and the crash blocks. Puyo Puyo, it can get chaotic, but if you're not playing Puyo Puyo 4, then the only thing you're worried about are the Puyos. There's nothing else, also the clear gels, of course. So with this game, for the sheer variety of different blocks with different effects that are kicking in at any given time, it adds this element of chaos that very few dropping block puzzle games have, in my experience. And I've played a ridiculous number of these things. So I was very pleased with that. It was nice to see.
It sounds like, man, you sounds like you're a pro. Like, you've been playing a ton of these. That's awesome. That's awesome.
I was going to ask you guys out of general curiosity, what would you say are your favorite puzzle games in this? Actually, any puzzle game. It could be even like Devil Days or something that comes to mind.
What you got, Dan?
Well, definitely the single biggest influence, to be honest, for this back in the day was Baku Baku Animal on the Sega Saturn.
You're all right with me. Yes. Did you play with the mouse or not?
I did.
Yeah, man.
But that's largely, playing Baku Baku Animal, for people who don't know, it's a very standard kind of columns-esque game, but you're dropping either food or animal heads, and you match the animal head up with the specific food type, and it will eat all the food and clear the screen. And depending on how well you play it, you can, weave a whole trail of, say, carrots through the whole game grid, drop a rabbit on it, and it'll consume the whole lot and clear a massive amount and drop a whole load of junk onto your opponent. And I wanted to find a way for day and night to have that effect of big clear, and that's how we came up with the binary state. So you can collect these, but you can't collect these. You stack them, you get that change, and then suddenly they all go. And that's very literal influence from that game.
Yeah,
that game is really trippy looking. I'm looking at it right now. That is a bizarre game, Dan.
It's so freaking good. And we used to joke about it as kids. Like, when we would play it, So whenever you did like a combo, there was like these two characters on the left and right side, but they didn't have their own voices. It was just some generic voice that they put to the game. So the light clear, we always thought they were saying like ham and eggs. We go ham and eggs every time you like a clear that stuff. And there was like one other level above that where he says some kind of gibberish. But then the best one was when you cleared so much stuff at once that it just seemed like the game or whoever they got to record whatever fake voice just ran out of words. So he just said literal gibberish. So if I ever got a really big clear, I look over at my brother and go, oh, my, he go, what? Like, that's how you know danger's coming. They don't even know what to say. It's just gibberish. But it's fantastic gibberish. It's honestly one of my all-time favorite puzzle games, hands down. So I'm really glad and surprised you said that because so few people even know what the hell Baku Baku Animal is.
It's true, yeah. I mean, everyone knows all the classics, but it's very rare that people remember that one. I
don't think I've ever even heard of the game, let alone played it.
No, I don't even. Yeah, I'm having to look it up right now just while we're doing this. It looks cool.
Look it up, but my computer might explode.
All those animals eating circuit boards and messing.
All the cats chewing on the wires.
Yeah.
Good times. Good times.
But how about you, Jaime? You can't escape this question.
Oh, man. I can't beat that. You were like jumping for joy a second ago. I can't do nothing about that.
You don't have to beat it.
The only thing I got, you already said it too. The only thing I got was, Street Fighter Puzzle Turbo, man. That was the game that I played a hell of them because I was a gigantic Street Fighter fan in general. Street Fighter 2, Street Fighter Turbo, all those classic Capcom games. So when that sucker came out, I loved it. I played the hell out of it. I loved the animations. I loved everything about it. And I love the simplicity, right? And I also love the fact that when you put those gems together and they would all kind of build up to those bigger there was just something super cool about it. So, it's nowhere near as cool as Dan's answer, I guess. But yeah, Street Fighter Puzzle is the way to go for me.
Should have gone first, Jaime.
I can give you a funny story about Puzzle Fighter though, if you want.
Yeah, go for it.
So I started playing Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo back when it first came out, and like you said, I was a huge fan of it. I liked the character animation. I liked the whole having Dan versus Dan battles, all that stuff.
Damn.
So I thought I was hot shit. So I'm going to a tournament that was being held at Virginia Beach, and I show up and I enter. I'm like, oh, this is going to be cakewalk. And the first two matches I won. No freaking problem. This wasn't so much double elimination. It was more like total wins they took. And if you won enough matches, you were considered square. So I'm doing all right. Third match shows up. This kid just shows up, sits down. Never played the game in his life. He's just like, yeah, I like Street Fighter. Like, okay, well, this will be a very quick match. Big freaking whoop. And this knucklehead hit me with a 99 block combo. And I look over, he had no idea what the hell he was doing.
What?
I was like,
button mashers for life.
No.
He had to know what he was doing.
That's what I was going to say. It's not his first match. He got you, man.
He swore up and down, but I still believe to this day he gave me the straight hustle, the VA special. Just shook it down. But that match took me hardcore on that game. I was like, you know what? I love Puzzle Fighter, but I can't play it anymore. I put it down. Like, if friends wanted to play it, I'd already go, I'll play if we have to, but I don't know, man. I got beat by like a 10-year-old. I don't know anymore.
Yeah, and the problem with those games for me, they're just so stressful, man. I've told Dan before, even when I was playing day and night, the hamster in my head is just, the wheel is just slowed down to a grind, man. And every time I play those games, I remember about a couple of weeks ago, and Dan, so Dan had asked me and another one of our coworkers to try it out again, and it was about a month ago. And I swear to God, me and the coworker were playing for, no joke, maybe a good 10 minutes with people watching us. And then at one point I looked around and everybody looked so bored, man. And it's because we were just so slow. We were so slow. So I just, yeah, it's not my thing, but I love it. I love Puzzle Fighter. I love Day and Night. I'm terrible at those kind of games, but they're such a blast.
You know what I love about Puzzle Fighter? And this actually leads me to a question. Puzzle Fighter is available to play on Xbox One. Will Day and Night be available to play on Xbox One in the future?
That is a very, very good question. And I know internally, so the one thing that I know the guys, and I'm sure Dan could talk about this way more than I could, but, the Nintendo Switch is something that we fell in love with big time, just like everybody else, right?
Oh, God, yeah.
We love the hell out of this
Poor Cole
thing,
doesn't
right?
have one.
Yeah, that's why I've been so quiet this whole time. It's like, I don't have a Switch, so I haven't got PlayStation. I was going to ask if we could get it on Xbox. Well, look.
I was wondering the whole time. I'm like, what happened to Kristen Shaw over there? Where's Kristen Shaw?
Kristen Shaw again.
Oh, mercy.
I took Kristen's question.
Hashtag I am not Kristen Shaw.
You're sure, Louise? You're not Louise? Okay.
I hear that so much.
It's like, no, I'm actually Thelma, thank you.
But yeah, so we're big fans of the Switch, and I know internally we've been talking about it because we were talking about Xbox Live because especially years ago, because I was a gigantic fan of Xbox Live and I would buy almost everything that was on the Xbox.
Yes.
But it's kind of in some ways kind of slowed down a little bit. So all of a sudden this past year we realized, look, the Switch is kind of the place to be for indie developers because honestly, we're Ridiculous Games. This is really our first outing as an indie developer together under that banner, right? So we're like, we gotta put it out on the Switch. That's the first priority. But I mean, to answer your question, without a doubt, Xbox Live is something we want to take a look at. Even PC or Steam. I mean, there's a lot of different avenues, even mobile, right? Like even mobile, there's a lot of different places we can look at for that. So without a doubt, that's something we're thinking about.
Oh yeah, and I can definitely attest to what you were saying about Xbox Live. Like during like the PS3 360 era, we would have like freaking Xbox Live parties where it'd be like 10 people in the same party chat, not even playing the same game half the time.
Oh man, it was incredible. I remember back in the day, I was working at Konami. This is a good 5-6 years ago, and it would be tons of employees at late at night after work. We would be playing Worms. We'd be playing a ton of Xbox Live games, and it was all about the digital Xbox Live games. It wouldn't be the full, you know what I mean? There was something so exciting about it. And unfortunately, in the last few years, they've kind of lost a step or two. And that's where the Switch, I think, has kind of picked that right up. You know what I mean? Yeah. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was about to say, I'm honestly hoping that ends up picking up again with the next upcoming gen for sure, because I can definitely say beyond a shadow of a doubt that Xbox Live arcade era, and all those all those games that were just flowing off of that system. I have hundreds on that machine, literal hundreds. And that my goal was to always have the game that other people wanted to play, jump on. And of course, my favorite, as dopey as this is going to sound, was probably just the Bomberman that was on there because that I was addicted to Bomberman.
We played. I mean, Konami owns Bomberman, so we were at Konami, so we would play Bomberman because there were two of them. There were two of them on Xbox Live, and both of them were a blast, man. And they were so simplistic, but it didn't matter. Like it didn't matter. There was something just really fun about getting your buddies together and just playing a game together on Xbox Live, right? And it's just been kind of missing. And I think that's where Switch has really picked that up. And that's where we're thinking Switch has to be the first place. And we're really happy with the result. And Dan and our crew have done an amazing, at least for me, they've done an amazing job putting day and night together. And hopefully, it's out today. Hopefully people out there who play the game will enjoy it just as much as we have. And it sounds like you guys have as well.
Oh, for sure. Because I'll tell you, so as much as I love the Switch, one of the biggest hiccups that I've noticed it has, if you're not careful, is that everyone loves the Switch. So stuff gets on there and it can get lost in the shuffle. And sometimes a lot of games don't get the promotion that they should get. So I have this penchant, and Joe can vouch for this, where I'm intentionally looking like, okay, I need to see some stuff that's not getting promoted on like Nintendo's website. I need to see the stuff that's not being promoted heavily because these are the games that need to get that here. They need to be talked about because they deserve that bump.
I think you're absolutely right. And by the way, I do the same thing. Every single day I go on my Switch, or like Tuesdays and Sundays, whenever there's like new release stuff coming out, I take a look and see what I like. And I'll make the effort. Even if it's like $10-15 a pop, I will still buy the game. I'll try it out. I'll play it. And sometimes you find some gems in there, man. There's some really, really good stuff in there. But you kind of have to keep an eye out for it. And luckily, at least in our case, you know, and I know what you're saying. There's sometimes times when there's a lot of stuff that comes out on there. And luckily for us, at least this week, there isn't a whole lot coming out at the same time. So my hope is that, you know, people out there see us and find us and give us a shot. And one of the things that I will give Dan, you know, not that I'm trying to pat ourselves on the back, but I will give Dan kudos on is,
please,
you know,
that
is the art style and is a lot of the art stuff that he's put together in terms of like the icons and the iconography on there. Because as silly as that sounds, that's actually, for Switch fans, that's actually super important. If you have bad icons on there, and I've done the same thing, if there's an icon that I don't like, that game gets deleted like right away, man. It's really bizarre. I don't know what the mentality is on that, but at least for me, if there's an icon on there that I don't like being on my Switch, it's gone. So
it's your game shelf. I mean, it's your digital game shelf. If it doesn't have pizzazz, what the hell is it doing there?
Exactly right. Exactly right. And that's where I think with Dan and the guys, they've done a fantastic job on that. So we're really happy with that.
Yeah, Wasn't there a developer? Oh, go ahead. Sorry. I'm sorry.
So I was just going to say another one of the things we really wanted to push on this was make it feel like it deserved to be on the Switch, on a Nintendo platform. We wanted to feel like it belonged to that family.
Oh yeah. Well, I can definitely say that you pulled that one off for sure. It definitely has a place.
Awesome.
Well, Root Beer is my jam, and chat just said that they just bought the game. So how about that?
Sweet. That's
so they'll
awesome.
eat PB&J for the rest of the week and bought it on their credit card. So rock on.
You know what? I like Goobers. You could try Goobers. Have you guys tried Goobers? It's so good. It's so good. Sorry, I don't know why I'm turning this into a PB&J podcast, but yeah,
it's that's what the P is for.
That's probably the most mundane thing.
But I definitely want to follow that with something. Like Joe, you had a question, but I definitely got to follow that after your question because I just thought about something that would be an interesting thing to bring up.
Go for it.
So for some odd reason it's not odd reasons because Halloween's coming up, the topic of worst candy out there, period, has been on the button. And people have been claiming candy corn. And I will vehemently say candy corn is not the worst candy, which it is not. But that does make me ask other people, what do you feel is the worst candy on the market? Like if it showed up in your bag or your kid's bag, would you just throw a fit and say, take this crap back?
You know what? I will say, so I'm going to give the reverse. So I know a lot of people bitch and moan about Jolly Ranchers. I freaking love the little square, the little rectangle Jolly Rancher candies. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I love Jolly Rancher. Who doesn't love Jolly Ranchers?
I could have swore lately it's been like everybody's been against Jolly Ranchers, man. I don't know what's going on. At least
Green Apple can go fuck itself, but
yeah.
I will say the risk of I will say the one detriment to Jolly Ranchers, unless you're using it for this purpose, is they're a very good assassination method. Or things to use. Jolly Ranchers are perfect for that.
Oh, do you mean toss it at somebody's face? Is that what you're kind of saying? Like just
no, I'm saying give them a Jolly Rancher, then give them to just laugh real quick or something, and they'll just choke on it because the damn things are full for choking.
Because those suckers can really hurt bad if you throw them right at somebody's face. Just so you know.
Yeah, but then they'll pick it up and go, "Ooh, candy! Yeah, I'm not giving them my candy. Screw that. That's my Jolly Rancher."
I gotta agree with Root Beer is my jam because he says circus peanuts.
No.
But here's my defense though. My mom loved circus peanuts, and so we always had them in our house. Mm-hmm. And now I'm like, I look at them, and on one hand, I have a little bit of nostalgia over my mom, and on the other hand, I'm like, we ate so fucking much of those.
Oh god,
that would be
edible
like
foam
cornbread. I have the same response to that. I'm like, oh, mom, please don't eat that.
For me, that would have been Starlight Mints. They were always in my house, and I was like, these aren't good candies in their own right. Why are you having them in the house to just overwhelm me with awfulness? But I would say, like, worst candies for me are Mary Jane's. Bite me. Most people don't even know what they are anymore because they need to be removed from the market.
Yeah,
and
pretty
also, as odd as this may sound, Turkish Delight.
Oh, my buddy Jacob would fight you over that.
What is Turkish Delight?
I honestly don't even know. So, basically, I think it's just like gelatin with a hint of sugar. But I only heard of it prior because, as a kid, as many kids, I read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and that was the candy that the witch used to convince the brother to turn on pretty much the line. So I'm sitting thinking, this is going to be some really good candy. I mean, this kid's switched for Turkish Delights. He doomed an entire realm and his siblings for Turkish Delight. So I went to PAX Prime for a few years ago, and down in Pike Place Market, there was a place that was selling Turkish Delight. First time I'd ever seen it outside or heard of it outside of that book. So I had to have some. I was ramped to go and took a bite and spit that trash out so fast. It was horrible.
Oh my God.
Now, was this the traditional Turkish Delight from the Middle East, or was it the UK variant?
That's the thing. I don't even know. Like, I'm going to wager it may have been more so like the traditional, because it seemed like it was like a nice like mom and pop like sweet shop on like Pike Place Market. So they homemade it. So I'm going to assume it was probably more the traditional kind. Because I do know that it was made. It's not meant to be very sweet, because it was made during a time where like supplies were low, and basically like, just during harder times. But it just, at the time, I just did not know. All I knew was, ooh, this is the famous Turkish Delight, the fabled candy. Then I ate it, and it was anything but. It just blew my mind.
Oh,
so,
God.
like, will I ever see Turkish Delight getting thrown in my kid's bag? Probably not. It would be really wild if that happened, though. But with that said, I still feel like it has to be named when I think of worst candies out there.
Yeah, I would go with Mary Jane.
Yeah,
Carnage said gummy worms. I don't know what the fuck is wrong with him.
What's wrong with you,
We
Carnage?
just need to ban Carnage.
That's like my friend who said Kit Kats. I'm like, have you ever had bad candy? Because you just said Kit Kat, and that is not a bag.
That would be like if someone said Twix is bad. Like, are you crazy? What is wrong with you?
Yeah, Twix
How
are
do
bad.
you not love Kit Kat?
Yeah, well, the thing is, like, Kit Kat, what I'll say about Kit Kat is I look at Kit Kat as being like a base candy. It's a wafer covered in chocolate. So it's not bad, but I'm also not going to, flip my shit if someone say, here, have a Kit Kat, But at the same time, give me a Kit Kat. But by that same token, if someone comes up to me and goes, worst candy? Oh, that's clearly Kit Kat. I'm like, let me go to my cabinet. Let me go get all the Halloween candy I've rejected for the past 5 years. And
the standard one has to be like the Tootsie Roll, right? Like the Tootsie Roll, not a fan unless you guys are, but not a fan of the Tootsie Roll.
I'll eat them.
My husband will eat Tootsie Rolls until I want to puke just from watching him eat them.
Really? They're so
He
gross.
loves them, and I don't know why.
Tootsie Rolls are another thing I consider base candy, though I will admit that waxy coating can get a little bit weird. So I won't throw them out, but I'm also not seeking out Tootsie Rolls. But what I will say, have you ever had Fruities?
Okay, the fruity Tootsie Rolls are good.
Those are ridiculous.
Those are, especially the lemon ones. Those are my favorite.
Mm-hmm. I will support Fruities till the cows come home.
Pernell, you're making me hungry.
I know. Now I'm looking up candy all over the place.
Oh my God.
great.
Hard-hitting journalism on SML podcast.
Hey, if this isn't journalism, I don't want to be proper with journalism, because this is the real deal. This is what the world needs to hear. Good candy.
It is. That said, we have been chatting for quite a while. I don't want to take up all of your nights. Is there any other questions that, or any topics you want to talk about that we didn't bring up, or anything you want to say?
What do you think, Dan? Do you have anything more we want to bring up?
I think from the game side, we're pretty good, actually. You guys definitely seem to be enjoying playing it, which is amazing to hear.
Yeah.
And you seem to definitely be picking up on a lot of the themes and tones we were going for, which is awesome.
And by the way, one thing that we didn't actually mention, so one thing that the team I know is striving to do, and Dan's working on this now, is, DLC. So in terms of giving fans of the game out there even free DLC in terms of Christmas packs or new characters or new modes or
more costumes.
Whatever costumes, all that kind of good stuff, right? And we're going to try and support it as much as we can, so that way it's just continuously fun every so often. So that's absolutely the plan.
Nice.
I was definitely hoping to hear that.
Support it all the way to Xbox.
Yeah.
So I can definitely say flat out that one thing I was hoping for was that you would mention something akin to bringing some of those dares into options as modes to play normally, like that upside down mode. That would be pretty fun to spell upside down.
That's not a bad idea at all. In terms of a mode where you're just playing through some of these different. Yeah, that's kind of cool.
On random, play dares on random. That'd be neat.
Random
Right.
dares, yeah.
Man.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
And even just add more dares. just more
Yeah.
dares.
Every interview, we're guaranteed to have one and only one good idea.
Come on. We all agreed to ban Bit of Honey and send it into the sun. I think that's 2 good ideas.
Bit of honey's delicious, though.
Bit of Honey is no. They're like Mary Jane's but sweeter. No.
That was another candy
geez.
my mom kept around all the time.
Wait, so
No.
you're okay with Bit of Honey but not the
I
other?
know.
What is this?
Oh, Lord.
So real quick, the only other thing I'll say, and I'm sure people do this all the time, you know, if anybody out there wants to follow us, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, Twitter.
Give us the details. Where can we find you?
Absolutely. So it's at Day Night Puzzle. So one word, Day Night Puzzle. And then if you go to YouTube, we're going to start adding a bunch of videos on there, some little how-tos, all that kind of good stuff to make it a bit more enjoyable and fun for the fans out there. So, yeah, feel free to follow us. And we're going to make sure, even on Reddit and all that, we're going to make sure to talk to fans if they have any questions, or if anything, we'll make sure to respond as much as we can to kind of keep the ball rolling a little bit.
Awesome. Sounds good. Well, Dan, Jaime, it has been a pleasure having the two of you on the show. It's been a really fun chat. Jaime, you're going to have to come back when we have a wrestling show one of these days.
Oh man, I even warned Dan right before. I'm like, oh, we might talk wrestling.
Yeah.
We might. But
next Wrestlecast, I'm going to have to get you on.
If for whatever reason you do, no joke, I will talk your ear off, my friend. So feel free to invite me anytime you want.
Oh,
Sweet.
Joe's on board for that.
God damn right I am.
It'll be an ear talk off competition.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody. We appreciate you guys taking the time.
Thank you for being on the show. Everyone else, we're going to take a real quick break. We're going to be back with more show. Chris is going to be joining us. The party cast is going to happen. Dan, Jaime, do you have any final words to end the interview?
Dan, I've been talking a lot the last couple of seconds. What you got, my friend?
Just get ridiculous.
Nice.
And find us on the eShop, guys. We're on the Nintendo eShop starting actually right now. So the game is available right now. So please take a look. We would absolutely appreciate it.
Xbox Store 2020.
You got it. You got it.
All right, welcome back, everyone. Thanks for sticking around. Cole, Pernell, you're still here, and we're joined by Chris. Chris, how are you doing?
Hello.
Hi, Chris.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Hello.
Wow, you guys did that in unison, and it was scary.
It was glorious.
It's not even Halloween, and y'all are sitting over here being spooky. Knock that shit off. Yeah.
It's a review.
It's
Bad
spooky.
touch. Bad touch on my ears.
Yeah, it is review time. We have a lot of games to talk about, but before that, Chris, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing just fine. Actually, just really excited because I got my special edition, limited edition, whatever, of Destiny Connect, Tick-Tock Travelers.
Oh, yeah. What's in the special edition?
It is the game which has which has stuff in the actual, case and stuff. It has a hardcover art book and a very, very beefy soundtrack CD, which is the exact reason I purchased it. And
Single
a little
disc,
gold
multi-disc.
I didn't open it yet, but I think it's probably single disc, but it's like 40 tracks.
Oh, nice.
I might be bugging you to hook a brother up with some jams.
Yeah, and it's also got a little gold coin on it that has Isaac on it. And then I also ordered a T-shirt with Isaac on it. That's going to be arriving probably Thursday. So
that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Is it one of his forms, or is it like base Isaac?
It just is, his regular form, like his default. I think. I don't remember actually. I ordered it all back in March.
Damn.
Man.
Yeah, that's when they started the pre-orders. I was like, yes, click, click, click. So yeah, that's my bit of excitement for now, and so I'm interested in hearing this review of it.
Well, it's a good thing that you're
sweating.
Good thing you're interested in hearing it, because the first game to talk about tonight is Destiny Connect Tick-Tock Travelers, developed by SYUPRO, published by NIS America, released October 22nd on the Switch and PS4 for $39.99. Join Sherry and her friends in this heartfelt adventure through time as they unveil the mystery behind why time has stopped in their beloved town. Take history by the hand together. Pernell, tell us about it.
A heartwarming introduction. What are you on, man? But it's actually very appropriate. It's an appropriate one because this game hit me good. I was not expecting what I got out of it. So originally when I requested the review of it, I had just kind of heard of this game's existence, and I was just curious to see what an original IP could look like coming out of NIS, because as much as I love NIS, they have staples. That's their general bread and butter as of late. So I was glad to see this game come down the pike. And I got to say, it's good. It's quality stuff. So the game, I will say, first and foremost, I feel as though the game starts off kind of in earnest. Like, it doesn't take forever to build up the scenario. You are a kid named Sherry. You are going to visit your aunt at her, your grandmother at her bakery. And then when you go home to go see the fireworks, stuff happens. Like, it's pretty quick. And once that stuff happens, the ball is rolling. Now, I will say, though, early on in the game, like when you're running around in Sherry's house and you go out of her house and go down the hill to enter the town, I was a little worried at first because the camera was, not great. And it was driving me crazy. And I was like, I hope this is not what I'm looking forward to, because I'm going to not be pleased with this. But thankfully, the issue only existed inside of her house. It was weird about that, and I got used to that too. And I also would say the solution to the other issues I was having was to set the camera to slow and also just hit, I think it was like the ZR trigger, and it pans out a bit so you're not like right behind her back. So once I got past that, I wasn't having any issues with the transitions and walking. So gameplay-wise, one thing to get out of the way is that when you hear this is a game about time travel, a lot of people start to think about, one of the biggest time travel games that are out there, which is Chrono Trigger.
I thought you were going to say Time Commando.
No, but what if? So, and when you're playing Chrono Trigger, one of the biggest things about that game and the time travel aspect is that you just jump between time periods at your whim by finding portals and whatnot. But that's not how this game works. This is more of a linear narrative, so to speak, where the base environment is your home time. But when the story demands it, your friend Isaac is a time traveling robot, will actually take you all back or forward to the time period you need to go to, and you'll experience an adventure there. Think of them as like dungeons, like a time period in a scenario within the time period is a dungeon. And when you're done, you go back to your base world, stuff happens there. Another event, you go forward, so on and so forth. So it plays out kind of like a linear adventure. And as I was playing it, the thought that came to mind for me with this game was that I have this feeling that it was designed to be a very, not so much, actually no, it would be more of like a first RPG for people, but also something that can be appreciated by those who have been playing them for a while. And what I mean by that is they don't hit you with a ton of extraneous bells and whistles to get you, thrown off the beaten path or get you confused. It's like, here's a straightforward RPG that is fun to play and easy to get a grasp on. But that isn't to say that there aren't any cool mechanics to make you enjoy your experience as you play. For example, I think battles in this game are a lot of fun. The way battles work is that they are turn-based, typical turn-based, but your characters don't get MP in this game. Instead, they have an energy gauge that goes 100%, 200%, and 300%. And each character has a set of skills that range between 100%, 200, and 300%. So every turn you get, plus when you do damage and when you receive damage, you get charges on this energy gauge. And when it's your turn, you can enact a skill from that energy gauge. And when you've used the skill, if you don't have enough energy for the next one, you have to either wait it out or use an item to get more. Due to the fact that skills aren't dependent on a depletable resource that is hard to recharge, typically you have to worry about MP using elixirs or whatever, ethers or whatever, you're actually incentivized to want to use your skills. So a lot of character use is going to be dependent on the skills that your characters have and what you want to have available to you at that time. So, for example, Sherry's big hit is that she uses a lot of elemental attacks, which are awesome because that's how you want to focus on weaknesses. She's also one of the only characters, aside from Isaac, who can heal party members, so she's also useful for that. And then Pegrio, her friend and your first party member that you get, is big on using different trap type abilities. Honestly, one of the most useful ones, which is energy trap. You place it, and every time the boss or enemy goes to use a skill, they take damage. It's a freaking fantastic skill. I almost had trouble ever wanting him out of my party, but I wanted to diversify my bonds, so on and so there you go. So all the characters learn skills as they play through the game and level up. However, Isaac, the center robotic character, is a little different from everybody else. He can never leave your party. You can switch out the humans outside of combat, but Isaac can never leave. Also, if Isaac gets KO'd, the game is immediately over. I don't know if that's ever going to happen, but if he gets KO'd, the game is over. Now, Isaac's abilities can be learned through leveling up, but also, unlike the other characters, he gets something called form change. As you play through the game, you get transformation gears or form gears, which when installed at the mechanic shop, he gets access to a new form. Each form gives him different base stats and also different abilities that are attributed to that character, that form. So essentially, Isaac is about 6 characters in one, and you can swap between them free flow without penalty whenever you want in battle. So you could say, for example, you go to champion form. I'm not going to say what that is because you should see for yourself, but you can go to champion form, which is faster than the other forms. See, as you might say, get 2 turns because of the speed on his character. Use an attack, and then when the next turn comes, switch to a slower but powerful form and get that free hit in. And I actually kind of enjoyed doing stuff like that using Isaac. I like how he was such a versatile character to use. And you can also, each of those forms has its own sort of sphere grid from Final Fantasy. It's not elaborate or huge or anything, just a little small grid, but you can inject gears that you construct into this to give them additional bonuses and stats, like some HP or SP regeneration or HP regeneration, stuff like that. So honestly, I was genuinely enjoying this game. And as anybody who listens to the show, and you guys know, I am a big sucker for games that have heavy challenge. I want my games to beat the crap out of me so I can come out on top and feel great about it. This game does not do that. And I didn't care. I genuinely did not care. I was having a wonderful time, feeling good playing this game. It invokes a much simpler, happier time in RPGs for me, when it was just about kids going on adventures, having fun, falling into weird, coincidental, and amazing odds that they have to overcome. It's just freaking great. And the enemy design is cool. They're all meant to be weird appliances that came to life. I'll admit there's a little bit more palette swapping than I would have liked, but I'll live. It's not a big deal. Definitely not a game ruiner. But I honestly I'm having a great time. I love this game. I think it's a great game. And again, it's a game that I did not expect to be what it was. So, spoiler alert, I have another game to review after this one, which has been well anticipated for me for freaking obvious reasons. And yet, this one engaged me more. Yes. So, I'm a sucker for originality, and I'm a sucker for youthful adventures. This game is all of it. It's good. It's a fun, jaunty ride. And again, this game is stupid easy. I gotta say, so one of the things I didn't mention is that all the characters and their skills can be upgraded by using wisdom elixirs that you can find from beating up enemies. You can use them on the skills and level them up, which makes them stronger. with the exception of Sherry's very first skill, I never used a single one.
Wow.
And it didn't matter. I just had to say it. Again, though, I still enjoyed the game. I still love it. The soundtrack is freaking sweet. So when you told me it came with the OST, I was like, "Oh, you made a good call." I was listening to the OST at work, like the boss theme at work, and the only video for it was actually someone fighting one of the bosses in the game with the music playing, and I was like, "That's enough for me." I'll deal with all the sales to hear this track play.
Well, I was going to say, like, the thing I knew about this game going in, and it's why I pre-ordered it so early, is that SYUPRO DX, the actual developer of this, besides, the co-developer with NIS, they're the same people that made The Longest 5 Minutes.
Oh, now I remember you loved that game. You're the reason.
Yes. And it's the same composer, Yukinari Irumigawa. And
Really?
This is his second video game soundtrack besides Longest 5 Minutes. And
this guy is on a he's on a roll. Though I will say, you'll chuckle at this because you're a big music guy too. There's a track that plays in the game. It's like pretty much one of the danger tracks or whatever. When you hear it, I'm not gonna say what it is, but if you play it sometime soon, you hear it and you tell me. But I swear it sounds like the hurry track from Final Fantasy VII. Like, it's so similar that I was like, that's definitely it. He was totally inspired by that track. But
I might have heard it already. I played about 4 hours into the game so far.
You might have heard it then.
Might have heard it, but yeah, I mean, the thing is that, also if you played The Longest 5 Minutes as much as I have, you can hear it. And also, The Longest 5 Minutes special edition came with like a bonus soundtrack of like, selected tracks from all these mobile games that SYUPRO DX did before they started doing console games. And yeah, he has a style. He very much, and it's very Uematsu style. But he absolutely has this style that he leans on, and yet I can't fault him for it because every song that he makes is gold.
Yes.
You can even find him on Spotify. He has a 5-track EP of just original music, and it still sounds like that.
Sounds like you just told me what I'm doing after this.
Yeah, I'm a little obsessed with this. I'm a little obsessed with this developer, SYUPRO DX. It's like 3 guys. They're 2 comedians and a musician.
This game?
Yeah, that made this game. 2 comedians and a musician they met in college, in high school, is SYUPRO DX, and they were a mobile developer. And then when they partnered with NIS, they got a bigger budget and more people to work on the game. But at the core of it, it's just like these 3 guys.
That is awesome to hear, and it actually adds a lot more weight to the quality of this title. Then it wasn't like a massive team; it's 3 freaking dudes.
And in the liner notes to The Longest 5 Minutes limited edition, the soundtrack had liner notes that was like interviews and stuff with them, and they said that like their goal is to tell an emotional story through absurdity and cliches.
I like these guys already. Then
I know, I love their mission statement. Anyway, that's my little 5-minute endorsement of this game. It
wasn't the longest 5 minutes though.
I'm going to bed. Bye.
That said, $40 on Destiny Connect. Pernell, what do you say?
Like I mentioned earlier, as long as you're not concerned with the ease of play, I think it's a solid buy. It's a very youthful quest that feels good to play through, and the story honestly is very much engaging. You'll want to see how it plays out and figure out why things are happening. And just a great game. I think it's wonderful.
Nice, Chris. You agree?
I'm going to echo that, and I spent $80 on it. So
nice. I love NIS collector editions. They're all so good. I want to get the Lana one.
I know. I've got 4 of them now.
I have a bunch of old ones. I haven't gotten any new ones, though. I'm excited that they're doing an Xbox collector edition for La Mulana. That's awesome.
Yeah,
finally, NIS is doing an Xbox game.
And you better buy it, too.
Goddamn right I'm buying that one, collector edition and all. That's on the list.
La Mulana is one of my all-time favorite video games. I would put it in my top 10, no question. And it may sound like a lot of games. I mean, whoa, 10 freaking games. But it's out of thousands. Thousands of games.
Millions. Billions of games.
Billions of billions. Yeah, but La Mulana is up there. Love that game. It'll make you pull your hair out, though.
Oh, man. Well, speaking of NIS, the other game that you're going to talk about now is Legend of Heroes Trails of Cold Steel 3, developed by Nihon Falcom, published by NIS America, released also October 22nd on the PS4 for $59.99. Rian Schwarzer uncovers a dark plot that threatens his homeland. To face their enemies, he must prepare a new generation of heroes as an instructor at a new branch campus and guide them towards victory. Pernell, what's Legend of Heroes Trails of Cold Steel 3 all about?
Well, I'll say before I even go into this, that it is bloody criminal how little attention and praise this franchise gets. The Trails series, to me, is probably the best modern JRPG franchise running over the past decade. And it's not getting talked about nearly enough. We're talking about a series of games where it started, in America anyway, on the PSP in like 2011. And I'm playing a game in 2019 where the plot has been consistent across all these games. And characters that I haven't interacted with since 2011 are popping up again in this game for relevant reasons. It's not fan service. It's actual plot specific. It's freaking fantastic. But I digress. Obviously, I'm already saying buy the game. But so... Trails of Cold Steel 3. Trails of Cold Steel 3 is the shining example of don't fix it if it ain't broke. And what I mean by that is, for those who have played the previous Trails of Cold Steel games, the plot has changed. New things have been set in motion, and new characters are being introduced. But there's so much familiarity with how they structured this thing. And what I mean by that, for example, is, so Reen is now a teacher at the Thor's branch campus. I'm not going to go into all the specifics of why and everything, because that's build-up from other games, or if you want to watch the backstory log they gave you in the game, you can do that too. Of course, I personally would advise you to play the freaking games and use the backstory as just a refresher.
But if you don't have 80 hours...
That is true. I gotta be honest. I gotta be kind about that kind of thing. And also, the sad part, it's more like 160 hours. It's a lot of game. There's a lot of game there. But basically, Reen is now the teacher at the Thor's branch campus school. The Thor's branch campus school is in a town called like Leaves, but it may as well be Trista in all the same forms. It has almost the same like structure of shops, and you still go through the same process of like walking around the campus and meeting all the different people that work there and interacting with the townspeople, blah, blah, blah. So the structure of the story is also kind of the same as the older Trails games. Like the second game, there was like a lot of upheaval, and it wasn't so much of the episodic the field training and stuff. But this game, they brought back field excursions, because now as a teacher, Reen has to take his students on these field training exercises that like he used to go on growing up, though the circumstances are a lot different for these guys. But basically it's the same flow and fever that the previous game had. Now, hearing that might make a person think, well, that sounds kind of boring and bland or stupid. But you're thinking about a game series that doesn't suck, that does suck. This sentence does not, and they did a great job of keeping you very much interested, because the writing is phenomenal. You'll want to learn about all these characters and their scenarios and what put them there, and also just the interactions. Now, enough rambling about that to discuss the gameplay and some things that they've changed about the game compared to the old one. So, the combat in this game is turn-based, just like before. But some things they changed I thought were really cool were two things, or a few things. One, the orbment system that was used in the games to acquire different spells and stat buffs. Orbments are these little crystals that you can put into a console that your characters carry around called the Arcus. And depending on what you put in there, it determines what your spells are going to be and whatever stat buffs you're going to get. There's one particular crystal called the Master Quartz. You can only equip one at a time per character. And that was like the one that determined the majority of your buffs and also like a level up progression. It was the only course you could have that could level up and get new skills on it. But they leveled up so slowly in the previous games that for the most part, you're only going to level up a certain number of them before you beat the game. There's going to be a number that don't quite make the cut. But in this one, they made so you could equip 2 Master Quartz instead of just one, which allows you a lot more versatility on equipping your characters to play around with different builds for what you want them to turn out to be and how you want to play. The most important change I think they did to combat, though, is something called Brave Orders, which I thought was going to be kind of a superficial dud, but turned out to be really freaking awesome. So, in the previous games, when you got when you did say weakness damage or hit with criticals, you would get something called a brave point. That allowed you to eventually do follow-up attacks and rush attacks when the time came. That was like a depletable resource to do those attacks. Now in this game, they added the brave actions to go along with the rushes and stuff. And what brave actions are is unique orders that every party member can learn that affects your entire party, and they last for a set number of turns. So let's say, for example, you have one brave point available. You can have Breen use something called Raging Will. It's the first one he gets, and it gives everybody in your party a 20% attack buff. And it also gives them CP, which is the resource used to use craft specials. It gives you more of that. So now when you use this ability, it works for a certain number of turns, both your individual party members and your enemies. So don't think after every party member gets a turn, that's one. It's every individual action. So if you get 8, that's if the enemy gets 3 turns, I mean, he has all 3 of the turns where it's effective. So there's a lot of strategy in determining when do I want to use my brave action to get the most use out of it, because it counts as a free turn and it really can turn the tide of battle. I actually was playing on hard mode, got into a boss fight, and if I didn't use brave actions effectively, I would not have been able to win. Like he would beat the tar out of me unless I used them. That's how well integrated they are into the game, and I was very happy about that. In addition to that, they added a break meter, which can be used in an interesting way too. So in addition to every enemy's life gauge, there's a break gauge, and you can deplete the break gauge by hitting them with weakness affecting moves and critical attacks. And if you break an enemy before they die, you immediately get whatever item they would have dropped. It's a guaranteed drop at that point. And they become easier to unsettle, which is how you get a lot of criticals and follow-up attacks, which leads you to get more brave points, which leads you to use those brave actions like I mentioned before. So it pays to rock those weaknesses and get those breaks off so you can actually do damage. Now, one of the more interesting things they changed about the combat, though some might not like it, but I think it's kind of cool, is enhanced form. So enhanced form is actually a buff that the enemies got. This is not a buff that the players get. This is bad for you, the player, in that throughout the series, you had something called an S-Craft. S-Crafts were moves that you could, if you had enough energy to use them, you could use them to interrupt enemies' turns and jump in line and do attacks and things of that nature. And it was honestly kind of a necessary thing to use throughout the franchise. In this game, however, when an enemy goes enhanced, their stats all get buffed up. Their attack and defense gets buffed up, but they become more vulnerable to break damage. However, one additional buff that enhancement gives them is they are sometimes able to also do the equivalent of an S-Craft. So you might suddenly be preparing to heal yourself and go, nope, S-Craft, and just do like a freaking super move and just rock your face. So you have to be exceptionally careful when you're fighting some of the bosses in this game, and be mindful of the fact that you can't always just let your guy wait till the next heal turn, because you might get S-Crafted and get your ass handed to you. So when an enemy goes enhanced, you want to break your balls to get break damage off as fast as possible, because it's only by breaking them at that point that you can knock them out of enhanced form. And I love that element. Yeah, it's more for enemies and it wrecks your shop at the wrong times, but I love that. I like that they made sure to add yet another element of challenge in the franchise that's multiple games in at this point. But aside from that, much of the game, I would say, feels very similar. So they changed the fishing mechanic a bit. So now when you go fishing, it's a little bit more involved of a mini game. And I will also say that for those who are familiar with the franchise, the previous games had a little mini game called Blades in it. It was okay. It was more like, think of like kind of like Trump or like Uno or something. But the new one that they added for this game, I thought was really cool. It's called Vantage Masters, and I got kind of addicted to it. So it's like Yu-Gi-Oh! Junior, in that you have a master character and you collect a bunch of other card characters that can be applied to a field, and you're basically battling between the two characters to see who can knock out the other leader character first. It's a surprisingly in-depth little mini game, and you can play a large number of characters in the game by just walking up to them and say, hey, I want to play Vantage Masters with you. And they'll go, sure. And if you beat them, you get cards from them. And you can build a cool deck. I think it's like someone finally said, I'm tired of Triple Triad being the king of, RPG card games. we gotta take that torch take that crown from them, because I think this is definitely a solid runner for that. I love Vantage Masters very much. It's a lot of fun.
You're comparing it with Triple Triad. That is high praise for a video game card minigame.
Yes, it deserves to be compared to that. It really does. I think Vantage Masters is awesome because all the different characters you can summon, different characters have elements that can be used. You hit their weaknesses and strengths. Some of them have special abilities. So when you apply them, they let you do different things. The different leader cards all have different abilities to them, which determines which leader you'll want to play when you earn them. It's a fantastic game. And coming off of Blaze is really freaking good because while I did enjoy Blaze, I felt Blaze lacked a certain strategy. In fact, it lacked all strategy. It was just kind of like, do I have the card? Fine, I'll play it. This game feels a lot more strategic in that you get to customize your deck and you can play things at the right time. There's more rules. It's good. It's good shit. Yeah, I said shit. But I honestly,
God.
How dare you?
Language.
How dare you, sir?
We're never going to be monetized at
this juncture. Forget it.
I don't know if we could have you on the show anymore after that.
Lasai!
I'm fucking offended.
I said good day, sir.
Perfect response. But like, yeah, I have genuinely come to love this game. I mean, like I said, it is the gameplay is more of the same aside from the changes I mentioned. I mean, you go down the calendar structure, you go on a field training exercise, you disembark at the location, you learn about the location, fulfill the requests, weird incident occurs, Reen and his team go off and resolve the issue, story elements happen, go back to school. I mean, it's that same flow, but it doesn't matter. It still feels good to engage that flow. The story is still well written. The characters are still well written. And you want to see where this plot is going. You want to see how things will be resolved, which, as of course, we all know it won't be because Trails of Cold Steel 4 is still coming. But that is supposedly the end of the saga. So that should be interesting. But I genuinely love this game so freaking much. I recommend this franchise to any JRPG lover. Especially if you're like, oh, I remember the glory days of Final Fantasy. Like, well, guess what? There are fantastic glory days still to be experienced today. Play these freaking games. One other thing worth mentioning for sure, though, I'm hoping this isn't something someone's going to come back and say, well, actually, Pernell. But one thing I was happy about that I noticed is that one thing I've always hated about the Trails games and the Trails in the Sky games, both Cold Steel and Trails in the Sky, is that in addition to the normal quests you get, there's a number of hidden quests like to dot around the map. They're usually time sensitive and they don't show up anywhere because, again, they're hidden. You're supposed to just talk to people until you freaking find them. I hate that shit so much. Now, what I've noticed while playing this is that while they don't show up on the large scale map that you can teleport with, if you're walking around, there are icons that show up for side quests on the map. So I've come across a number of scenarios where like just a guy on the roof like, hey, I need some help with something. Like, oh, I can help you with that. Thankfully, the map showed me a green freaking star, which means I knew to where to find you, as opposed to like hoping or going to a freaking FAQ to look up all the hidden quest information so you don't miss it and get your AP score all the way up. I'm glad that you can actually just walk around and just see it on the map. So I go talk to that guy and see what he asked for me to do. I appreciate that very much. But yeah, I think this game is fantastic. It lost turbo mode though, which is kind of unfortunate. Turbo mode was just a thing that they used to kind of speed up gameplay on the older two guys on Trails of Cold Steel 1 and 2. Though I like to think that as a result of losing turbo mode, they also just kind of made the maps feel less stretched out sometimes. Because I actually also did not feel so much like that as far as I did in some of the other games. Like in Trails of Cold Steel 1, you were in a place where it was like a massive plain, which looked beautiful. And you had to run back and forth 2,000 times. And then you're like, man, I'm so glad this turbo mode option is here to speed this up. I haven't experienced this game. I feel like all the spaces that are available are much more compact in a good way. So though we lost turbo mode, the game doesn't suffer for it.
That's good. Well, overall, $60. What do you think?
You better buy this damn game.
Well, fine then. If you're going to be so mean about
Pernell.
Pernell, what I want to tell you about the video game is...
I can't talk like that now because I shaved my neck.
On stage 1, episode 2, Reen actually gets the blue saber.
God, how do you not know this? Ugh.
I didn't
What kind
know.
of a nerd are you?
The worst kind. I'm the kind who wants to just have fun.
Oh, Lord. Anyway, next game to talk about is called Monkey King. Hero is Back, developed by Oct Animation Studio, published by THQ Nordic, released October 17th on the PS4 for $39.99. The all-powerful Monkey King once roamed freely between heaven and earth, but after angering the gods, he was imprisoned within an ice cage deep within the mountains. 500 years later, monsters attack a small village and a child flees to the mountains. Unknowingly, the child releases the Monkey King from his curse. With the help and encouragement from this special child, Monkey King saves the village from evil monsters. Did the synopsis just give it away, Chris?
I guess so.
Monkey King.
Well, I guess you have to be good enough to save the village, right?
Right. No, the village is just the first level. I mean, as far as I could tell, then I had to climb a mountain, so I'm pretty sure that I got away from the village at some point. Yes, Monkey King, the hero returns. What? The hero's back? Is that what it is?
Hero is back.
Hero is back. Okay. So this is, now I actually had to do some digging to even find this out, but it turns out that this is an actual movie tie-in game. There's an animated film that came out by the same title, that came out 4 years ago in China, and I guess it's on streaming stuff over here. I don't have a lot of streaming services, and I just didn't care to try and go find it. But apparently the main character, in English only, is voiced by Jackie Chan.
Wait,
so,
what?
Yeah, the titular Monkey King is voiced by Jackie Chan in the US version. However,
of the movie or the
such
game?
luck in the movie. I was going to say, however, no such luck in the game.
Nah.
They got for whatever reason, they went to like the, Cockney school of like Oliver Twist or something for all the voices in this game. Like they all have this Britishness to them, which, I'm not going to go into that so much. Well, I mean, I am, but I'm just like, I don't know why British was the choice, and I'm not going to explore that.
Is it kind of like how Dragon Quest started doing it after like 8?
A little bit. Well, here's the thing about Dragon Quest. Everybody has an adorable Yorkshire Northern English accent. This is more like like the Guy Ritchie, like gritty Cockney London accent.
Oh, basically, what you gonna do there, mate? I'm gonna knock your block off.
Well, maybe not, but it's just like
they say the C word a lot in the game.
Yes, lots of that. I was very surprised. Children's game, but they're just over there, just. Opening a can of C words. Anyways.
Cookies?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, anyways. No, so like, it opens up and it gives a kind of like one of those paper cutouts against action scenes, kind of like, comic book style intro, where it talks about this monkey, and of course the Monkey King is a very, very popular thing in like in Chinese literature, and a lot of video games are based on the character and a lot of different things, and like so many movies. I can't even tell you. Like I actually watched one with Jackie Chan in it, but he wasn't the Monkey King, called Forbidden Kingdom back in like 2009 or something.
Huh.
And it had Jet Li and Jackie Chan in it, and it managed to still be a disappointment.
Wow.
That's I know, but it was.
And that was related to this game?
Well, it's all related to the same legend.
Oh, the Monkey King legend. That's right.
Yeah, the Monkey King legend at large, which, by the way, in video games goes all the way back to the NES era. You could actually play Monkey King games on the NES.
Yeah, Root Beer's My Jam asked if this is linked to the NES game, and also quick shout out to Root Beer's My Jam for the sub earlier in the show that I'm a dick and didn't mention until just now.
Terrible.
Thanks, Root Beer.
I'm an ass.
Also glad you're liking Reventure. He said in the chat that he's enjoying Reventure.
That game is so good.
Somebody told me it went down to $2 on Steam, so I'm reiterating now. Go pick that thing up. Anyway,
Monkey King. Monkey King is not $2.
Yeah, it is not $2.
Journey of the Monkey King,
and it is not based on the Jet Li and Jackie Chan film of 10 years ago. It does not star Jackie Chan in it. Now that I've talked about every single thing that it's not, what it actually is a so it's a very cinematic looking 3D game. It talks about the Monkey King, who of course is a lowly monkey who gained all the powers of like heaven and earth, and like he mastered every style of kung fu. He cheated death, and he like learned what they called all of the 72 transformations, which I think that's just that's just part of the overall legend, because that doesn't factor into the game at all. But he got so powerful that he decided to start challenging the gods, and of course he ran into the big one, Buddha, who encased him in ice for 500 years for whatever reason. And so yeah, a little kid finds him. It's a little boy. Don't remember his name, and he has his little sister actually riding on his back in a basket. She's just a little baby, and I can't remember her name either. And it's literally 4 letters. It's like on, I think.
I mean, we've covered how bad you are with names on this show before.
Yes, I just don't even try now. And in fact, it's, I'm going to call foul on the game as far as my memory management goes, because they gave him a whole different name in the intro and right up to the point where he's captured. And then suddenly the kid's like, oh, you're this guy. And it's like a whole different name. But, I guess because that ties into the movie somehow or something. Like, it's something that's not explained in the game, but I suppose is explained elsewhere. Although it is kind of funny that the kid's like, oh, I know you. You're the Monkey King. I've got your trading card right here. And, like, whips it out, which I think is kind of great. And then, you kind of learn the ropes and how to fight enemies. Now, this is a 3D brawler. It is, very much in the vein of, like, stuff going all the way back to, like, Nintendo 64. Just... you run around a big open area and beat up guys. And as soon as you learn the ropes on how to do that, then it starts a peculiar thing, which is it allows you to move around freely while this kid is kind of walking ahead of you and talking and kind of giving you the whole story of like what's going on in the world. But you can only move extremely slow because you're supposed to walk and talk with the kid. Even though you can move around wherever, it's like the game forces you to like walk extremely slow. And I was like, I guess this is because they're just trying to force the story on you this way without actually fully stopping the game, which is really weird to me. And like, I was like, well, that's kind of a cool move, but then they did it again. And
it
then
could always be masking load times too.
That is actually true. But then after I left an area, it had to load the next area. So
then never mind.
Don't know how effective it was. So, as you go along, then, of course, if it's a 3D fighting game, then it's got to have some gimmicks because you can't just run around and punch things. That would be irresponsible. So it has a character development system wherein you actually get these red, they're Chinese symbols. I can't tell what they really are, but they float in the air and you absorb them as you go, and they work as experience points. And then there are green ones that work as life points to restore your life. This is very important because your life does not restore itself, nor can you restore it at any point apart from purchasing and consuming items. Huh. So, and the way that you purchase and consume items is to go around and look for ingredients laying on the ground. They get highlighted as you get close to them, so they're not like invisible or anything. Plus, one of the earliest powers that you get is the, I don't remember what it's called in the game, but it's like one of those third eye kind of things where it just washes the screen over in gray, and then you can see like, items highlighted. Yeah. That kind of thing. And so you can use that and like look for items. And if you get specific items, you instead of having a crafting system, you just straight up trade ingredient items for the fully made potion with a rabbit lady who has a gigantic hat that's like 3 times the size of like your character. So I was like, okay, that's fine. That must be from the movie too. Like, it's funny because I was really impressed by this stuff at first. And then when I realized that it was all based on a movie, I was like, well, then I just thought about, well, I wonder if this is in the movie. I wonder if that's in the movie. I could have just watched the movie and, figured it out.
That'll be your homework. Watch the movie.
Exactly, yeah, it's my homework now. It actually makes me do want to see the movie. Now, once you get into the actual action part, of course, you can unlock special moves, you can unlock, all these things. And really what is great about this game is the combat, because it's nice and fast. Your hits feel like they actually have power behind them. You can do a fast punch that, links up into a combo. Or you can do a heavy punch, which, takes some wind-up time, but really does a lot of damage. Plus, if you can manage to actually charge up that heavy attack before the enemy strikes you, then you catch them at an extra weak moment, and you can just, explode them immediately. And enemies do, they explode into, kind of chunks, but then the chunks kind of disappear immediately, so it's it's satisfyingly visceral and yet not actually violent. There's not a drop of blood in this game, because it is meant for children. But yeah, like I said, it's all about the different kinds of combo quick things, and then also the stomping everybody's heads in kind of moves. And enemies are so far kind of they're all sort of the same. They just kind of run after you and then do their attack with plenty of forecasting. But I'm sure in the later levels they get a lot harder. But the one thing that I did notice is that in the first area, every single enemy was the same thing. It was all the same green creature that I saw in the intro. And then when I got to the second part, climbing the mountain, they all became just a different thing, which was another kind of monkey. And
so repetitive enemies.
Little bit, yeah. Now here's that's not so much a knock. I mean, come on, I played Final Fight. I know, I don't mind fighting the exact same enemy time and time again. That doesn't bother me at all. But yeah, resource management became kind of a thing, although I noticed that none of the fights were so tough that I was just getting my ass handed to me and I didn't have potions or anything to take care of it, which is good. So yeah, it didn't really become about that. It was more the fact that the first stage has you going around this village and kind of, you could sneak around and try to get a sneak attack in. You could climb and do all this other stuff and do this platforming type thing. But it just kind of felt like it was in the way of all the fighting, because it was really hard for me to tell where to go sometimes. And occasionally the kid would pipe in and scream about the next location. Sorry, and I'll get to the kid, by the way, in a second. Anyways, but once it got to the boss fight and stuff like that, I was oh, this is great. No, I'm gonna get to the kid right now. So here's the thing, and this is gonna be my major knock in the game. This kid follows you around in the game, and every single fight that you get into, without exception, he screams at the top of his lungs, "Monster!" And then
adorable.
A couple of seconds later follows it up with "Ah!" Just screaming. And I heard the word monster so many times it started to give me anxiety. I was just can you scream anything else, kid? And here's the thing, after I beat the first boss and I actually got a second character. It was a big, huge pig man. Who I guess has some history. I guess he used to be a general in the armies or something. He's another mystical character that I just don't know anything about. It also had the voice in Cockney accent and all that. Yeah, yeah, the deeper voice, of course. Yeah, oi. And the thing about him is I was okay, cool. This is another character. So I guess maybe I can switch to him. Maybe he'll assist. Maybe he can be a heavy while my character's the faster character. Maybe this is something that could introduce a multiplayer aspect to it. And then, no, here's what happened. I got into a fight and the kid screamed, "Monster!" And then the pig goes, "Monsters!" And then they for every fight after that, they just both screamed monsters and ah.
Oh, man.
And apart from just being another character in the story, which, by the way, wasn't needed, the kid was doing just fine by himself. I was just what is the use of you? I guess, I'm really looking forward to unlocking more characters and having them scream about monsters. Monsters!
Oh,
monsters! Oh!
Well, $40 on Monkey King. What do you think of it?
Okay, so again, without having actually seen the movie, I can say this about the game. Combat is fun. It's very good. There's special moves that you get, which, by the way, every time you beat a boss, it unlocks more special moves that you can then pour experience points into. So you don't start with the full set, and it's not like on a grid or anything. Like, you get specific moves unlocked after specific bosses. They're all really great. I really appreciate them. I like a lot of what this game's going for in that. Like I said, combat's the strong suit here. Also, graphics. This game is beautiful looking. It's very, very nice. The weak points are going to be kids screaming and pigs. And I didn't so much care for, I don't like when, you fight a mini boss in a game just to get a key to unlock a door, and then a stage is made up of unlocking 5 different doors. And that's level 2. And there's only 10 levels in the game, but some people complain that it's short, but I'm like, these levels are huge, so I'm not going to complain about that. The other thing is that the music, I heard only one song in the background for 4 hours, and I'm not going to take it anymore. It's not that the music is bad. It's not that the music's bad, it's just not interesting enough to hold up for that long and to be in every single area that, in the early part of the game. If by 25% of the game I haven't seen a scenery change or heard different music, then that's a knock. So the game looks great, it feels great, everything else is it's got some weak points. So at $40, I'm going to give it a solid try it. Maybe look at some gameplay footage, see if it looks like it's for you. Apart from that, it's also got a physical release, so that means inevitably you're going to find it at the back of a GameStop for $10. True. Or less. So if you
keep an eye out for it.
Yeah, keep an eye out for it. If you play it at that point, then I can't say that you wasted your money. At $40, I would say might be better served elsewhere, but if this is your kind of game, then go for it. But apart from that, solid try it.
Awesome. Next game to talk about is the Jackbox Party Pack 6, developed and published by Jackbox Games, released October 17th on Xbox One, Switch, PS4, and PC for $29.99. It's the wildest party pack yet, with the Absurd Deathmatch Trivia Murder Party 2, the Weird Word Circus Dictionarium, the Hidden Identity Game Push the Button, the Comedy Contest Joke Boat, and the Offbeat Personality Test Role Models. Cole, you and I played this earlier today. What were your thoughts on it?
So I think, as a whole, personally, this may not be my favorite Jackbox pack. But Trivia Murder Party 2 steals the fucking show for me. And I say that knowing damn good and well that Trivia Murder Party is a touchy subject. People either love it or hate it. And I think that this primarily boils down to people think that because it's a trivia game, they should be able to answer all the questions. And you can't. The whole point of Trivia Murder Party is that the questions are meant to trick you. Mm-hmm. You're being held hostage in a hotel by a killer. He wants you dead. He's actively trying to murder you with trick questions. And so then people get all frustrated because the questions are worded a little weird, or they're completely obscure things that maybe 10 people in the whole world know.
Which again is the point.
It's the point. That's the humor of it. But I think that's lost on a lot of people because we get spoiled by trivia games that are pop culture shit that anybody can answer.
Yeah.
I love Trivia Murder Party. I loved it in the previous party pack. I love it even more in this one. The questions are even more obscene. The whole point basically is to knock you out when you get a wrong answer, and then make you play a mini game to try to fight for your life. These two are just kind of meant to kill you.
Yeah.
The odds are permanently stacked against you. And why people get mad at that, I'll never know. Because you can get dead and still win the game.
Yeah.
I did it. I did it earlier when we were playing. I've done it against D and the girls when we play. Number one gets so mad at me. You were dead. I don't care. I got lucky at the end. But you can win or lose the whole game in that last round. Mm-hmm. Which I'm perfectly fine with. Unless I'm the one that loses. I lost earlier. Like, I got every single question right in the initial phase of the game. And then we got to the final round, which is where you have to, like, rapid fire answer some trivia questions. But it's set up in that if you're alive, there's 2 options, and if you're a ghost, there's 3. And you click whichever one's applied to the question, if any, and you get a point, and you move that many spaces. So ideally, the person or people, you can make it to the end and have more than one person alive. It's rare, but it does happen. The person or people who are alive are a little ahead of the ghosts, but the ghosts get an extra question to help, or an option, so that they can earn an extra point on each question to try to catch up. So, like, I won a game because of that turnaround. I was dead as a doornail, and I won because I overtook Joe. Fuck you, Joe.
Yeah, kiss my ass. Burn in hell, woman.
There are no friends at the end of Trivia Murder Party. But then simultaneously, the next game, I lost on the very last question because in order to get out the door, you have to get all of the questions correct. It has to be a perfect answer, and that is harder than it seems.
Yes.
Because again, it's trying to trick you once you're dead. So yeah, Trivia Murder Party 2, if it is not obvious, is just like the shining beacon of this pack for me, and I loved it so much.
I will say there's not a single bad game in this pack, which hasn't happened too frequently. Like, there's always been at least one stinker in a party pack. Like, there's always one game you don't want to touch anymore.
You know what I boiled down to the reason why I don't think this is my favorite pack, though?
Huh.
The drawing side was very light. Usually there is one game that's very heavily focused on, like, goofy drawings.
Yeah, true.
And there was not one specific game with that focus in this pack.
There were some games that had drawing elements to it, but no game that was specifically just drawing. So I could see your gripe there.
Yeah, you weren't getting anything like Drawful or TKO out of this. I did like, which one was it?
Let's go through them. Dictionarium, the Weird Word Circus. This one was fun because it would give you a fake made-up word, and you had to make a definition for this fake made-up word.
And then you had to come up with a derivative.
Yes, you had to pick a synonym for it, and then you had to use it in a sentence, each round being voted on by everyone else. High score obviously wins. And what I love most about this one is it saves the winners.
Yeah.
So you can read a journal of all of the new words you've created in the game, like IJOP, which is a Japanese IHOP.
It's Japan cakes.
Yes. The Japan cakes was the greatest thing I've seen today. Just a synonym for IJOP is Japan cakes. Oh my God. I lost it when that happened.
So what you're basically saying now is now I'm going to have to call Okonomiyaki Japan cakes forever and ever and ever. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
That's going to happen. Effective immediately.
Japan cakes.
They're all Japan cakes now.
Yeah. So yeah, I had fun with Dictionarium. I thought that one was really cool.
Yeah, I did too. I did not enjoy that people kept like putting YouTube links.
That was one guy who was just trying to rickroll everyone.
And it's just like, maybe make it to where links aren't applicable.
Well, it's text. You could put in whatever text you want.
But if you're coming up with a definition, you don't need to be able to put forward slashes and shit that much. So I wish, I don't know. I always get annoyed with Jackbox games, especially when it comes to streaming them, where people just like actively seek it out and try to ruin your game.
Well, that's the nature of the beast. That's why they have an option in the games to censor people's entries. So if someone, would just drop the C word a bunch of times, you could censor that out.
That's a new thing in this Jackbox, though, is that you have manual censoring as well.
Yeah.
Because it used to just be you could click it over to family friendly, but that still didn't necessarily, that made more family friendly questions. But if you were streaming and playing with your family at the same time, then you were still subject to what people put in.
Yeah.
But manual censoring gives you more options as far as eliminating that kind of shit. So it makes it a little safer because I like to play Jackbox games. I'll play them at home with just, my husband and my kids, but I also like to stream them from time to time, although I didn't get a chance to with this one. But I like to stream them and play with Studa, and then just if people show up, hey, come on and play as well. So I like the ability to be able to like scale it back. I know you were like, fuck family friendly.
Yeah.
And if it were just
I play rules are out the window.
Yeah. When I'm playing like, normal circumstances like today, fine. But I appreciate that they have gone the extra mile to add a little more censorship options.
Yeah.
If you are playing in a situation like I sometimes do where I have my kids around. But yeah, I get so frustrated when people put dumb shit. Like, just play the game.
Yeah.
Make dumb jokes, sure, but some people.
Well, it was only twice they did that, so you're focusing too much on those two answers out of 3 hours of gameplay.
Because I'm trying to justify why I didn't like it, and you keep bringing it back instead of letting me move forward. So shut up and let me move forward.
Oh, Jesus.
The third game is a hidden identity game called Push the Buttons, where there's a bunch of astronauts, but surprise, a few of them might be aliens, and it is up to you to have different challenges and events where you pit people against each other and try to determine through their answers and through hacking and all these other different methods who are the aliens. And if you vote properly, you win. And if you vote wrong, the aliens win and you die in space.
So have you ever played Town of Salem?
No.
This, for anybody who has played Town of Salem, is very much like that, where you're trying to figure out people's roles. However, instead of like having multiple, heavy involved roles like Town of Salem does, it's simplified down to just you're either human or an alien.
I played the Werewolf Within, or Werewolves Within, whatever the title is, on PSVR, which is another similar game where you're trying to figure out who's in what role. Although with the PSVR, you could talk to each other and look around, which was pretty neat. But yeah, Jackbox kind of pares it down to make it easier in a 15-minute session, which this game actually has a 15-minute time limit. And fuck you, Jackbox, for having an achievement where you beat the game with 1 second left.
Oh no!
Beautiful. That's one of those achievements where, like, that's the PS. I will admit, if it weren't for the whole platinum culture or the 1,000-point culture, I'm a fan of achievements like that, where it's just like the odds of someone getting it are so slim that when you see it on there, things like, "Holy shit, you pulled that off! Well, I know it was crazy, right? This thing happened."
No, that's going to be an achievement that people get intentionally. Like, you have to work for that one. That's not going to be just a random happenstance achievement.
Yeah, that's a lot. Like, 1 second to spare.
I thought that one was a neat game. The next one I think might have been my favorite is Joke Boat, where if you remember, what was the name of the freestyle rap game in the previous Jackbox?
I keep wanting to call it Mad Lib City, and I know that's not right. It's
something like that.
It's Mad something City.
But it's basically Mad Libs in rap form. Well, this is Mad Libs in robots, joke form.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I played at your house actually, just where I
that shit was awesome. Well, now they have it in joke form, where they start off and you basically play Mad Libs for a bit, where they'll ask you like plural noun, object, place, stuff like that. and you'll have a bunch of random answers that you put in. When the game starts, you have to choose, or they give you a setup, and you get to choose a word to put into the setup. Like, you're so old that blank is going to ... And your choices would be like, your mom, your dog, your aunt, or whatever. And then you would pick one, and then you would type out the rest of the joke. So you have to come up with the punchline.
So it's like Dirty Dozens, the video game.
Yeah. They're not all mom jokes, but it's basically you put whatever jokes you want, and your vote, you go one-on-one against someone else, and the audience votes, and the goal is to win and be funnier than the other person. Or say some fucked up stuff.
So bad. You guys only had like 3,500 points, and I had 8,900.
Well, we only played when it was me, you, and Prime.
Still, 8,900 to 3,500. Get wrecked.
So apparently somebody is the rank king, or queen, rather.
I think if we would have played with the full lobby, that would have been different. I want to play that one with a full lobby. That one was fun.
It was fun, though. I had a good time with it. It can be challenging, especially on the third round of it, because instead of giving you prompts and letting you come up with your own joke, you have to tell somebody else's joke, but better.
Yeah.
And so then, like, you have the extra challenge. Like, the more points that joke earned, the more worthwhile it is to you to try to do better with it. And it's hard because you're instinctively like, oh, I can tell the best one better, but you probably can't. Unless you're me, in which case I'm amazing.
Again,
your mama is
played against two people, and half of Prime's answers had typos in them, so I wouldn't vote for him.
Your mama is so guabo?
Flob?
What the hell is guabo?
The fifth game in the pack is called Role Models, which is a personality test. What did you think of this one?
Okay, so playing this one offline with my family was a lot more enjoyable than playing it on stream, because it really depends on you being able to like talk to the people that you're with and know them and have at least like
familiarity with them.
Yeah, some kind of element of familiarity. Whereas when we were playing it with strangers, it was like, I don't know where the fuck to put these people. Who are you? You know? Because the whole premise of the game is like, you pick a category and it'll be something like Beyonce songs. And then you have to fit everybody that's playing into a song that suits them. So like Joe was Bootylicious.
Yes.
Or I was Bills because bitch I'm poor.
Yes.
And so like when we were able to crack jokes at each other because we knew each other, or say Awesome Prime because he was playing with us, it made more sense. But when randoms joined in, we were like,
yeah. That's it. Role Models is definitely it's definitely a game you have to play with friends. If you're streaming, I guess Role Models would be the stinker of the group.
Yeah.
But if you're playing a party style or playing with friends, streaming with friends, it was a fucking blast. I loved Role Models. That one was funny as hell. I
had a good time playing it with Dee and the girls because they got tickled by it.
Yeah.
Especially trying to fit them into like ridiculous categories and like what kind of HD TV show are you? And it's like, you know, so and so is Shiplat because she's tall and skinny, and you know that shit was funny. But like trying to play it with strangers.
With strangers, yeah. Well, 5 games, Jackbox Party Pack 6, $29.99. Cole, what's your verdict?
I give it an absolute buy it. They're still fun. Like, even when I don't go, oh, this is my favorite, like, I still had a lot of fun. And Trivia Murder Party 2, I think it's worth it alone just for that. And Push the Button was definitely my second favorite, but I really liked Town of Salem. And that being the same premise. I got so tickled when I fooled you fuckers.
I gotta ask, though, out of curiosity, what is your favorite Jackbox game across the series?
Drawful, obviously.
Yeah, Drawful is pretty
because she's an artist.
Yeah. I mean, that's the other thing, too. Like, it's not fair when I play the Jackbox games because I do use my computer and I have a Wacom tablet. So
Oh, that's totally cheating.
So yeah, I can go a little above and beyond.
That's straight up cheating right there. She's like, I'm actually using an art tool.
I'm actually using, and
actually, I have a stylus for my cell phone.
So yeah,
cheaters!
Cheater number 2
with tablets with styluses.
Using my fat ass fingers like a drawful champ.
Oh man. Anyway, next game to talk about is called Mistover, developed and published by Krafton Game Union, released October 9th on the Switch, PS4, and Steam for $29.99. Mystical RPG with the expeditions for finding the key to survival. Choose your next step wisely and keep in mind that your every move will change the future. Pernell, what is Mistover?
Well, I got a groan for that damn terrible ass pun.
Yeah, I agree.
That's sad.
Yeah, I give it. So $29.99, it gets a deny it for that pun.
That pun ruined it.
Where's Carnage? Where's Carnage when we need him?
Oh my God. So Mistover is essentially, in my opinion, an interesting little take on roguelikes. So what this is you're in a world where the world has been kind of torn asunder by something known as the vortex. And this vortex also is where monsters pour out of. And it has pretty much brought decimation to the world, so to speak. But one day, the vortex just stopped whirling, which allowed humans to try to figure out how to stop this thing. But they don't really know how long they've got. They're just like, we got to figure out what the deal is with this vortex. So what happens is people go into the vortex in hopes of finding a way to stop whatever's causing it and preventing it from resuming destruction of the world. You play as a character who is a member of a guild, or rather, let me start over. You play as a character who was found in the vortex. You don't know why you were there, because apparently one of the side effects of the vortex is that your memory gets wiped when you go in there. It takes certain aspects of your memory when you go inside of it. And when you're extracted from it, you are asked to join the Expedition Corps in exploring this vortex in hopes of saving the dead. So this results in you forming a team of 5 party members, which you can acquire from joining the guild and recruiting members, setting up into a party formation and going into dungeons that exist within the vortex. Due to the nature of the vortex, this allows the game to come up with a bunch of like very themed environments that don't have to be in any way related to each other because, magical world and weird shit. So you can go to like different places and explore them. Now, where this ends up being a little bit different from the traditional roguelike style of gameplay is that you are not one guy exploring the dungeon. You're actually a whole party. And whereas in a lot of roguelikes, you usually walk up to enemies and you get into you whack them and they whack you back until you die. In this game, you actually do normal JRPG or RPG general combat. So your party will be on one side of the screen, the enemy party will be on the other side of the screen. Now, in this game, every character has a set of moves they can use, and those moves are dependent on your position on your grid as well as the enemy's position on their grid. So positioning is extremely important. In addition, some skills can only be used if the character's positioned next to another character of a specific type. So you might have to have, say, a paladin standing in front of a Ronin so that the Ronin can use like Death Strike move. And if he's not there, well, can't use it. Now, there are a number of moves that can also rearrange your positioning on these maps, both for the monsters and for your characters. So you need to be on your toes to reposition your guys as needed and pretty much put them in places where they can be most effective. Now, that's the first interesting difference for being a roguelike. The second thing is that usually with roguelike games, you kind of walk around and you explore the area, but you're ultimately looking for the exit of the dungeon. In this game, you are still trying to do that, but they put an interesting emphasis on clearing the dungeon floor out. So even if you find the exit, you don't want to rush the exit and escape the stage, because here's where it gets interesting. Aside from the normal gameplay, normally roguelikes are all about if you die, well, your game's over, start over. But in this game, there's an added doomsday clock. that exist outside of the dungeon. So every time you do something like go into a dungeon and leave, or do certain things in shops or whatever, the doomsday clock ticks. And when the doomsday clock strikes, let's call it midnight, your game is actually over, like completely over. Your save file is gone, and you have to start everything over again.
Wow.
The doomsday clock ain't nothing to fuck with. It's the real McCoy.
I can tell.
Now,
Holy shit.
Yes, it is not just a name. Now, the way you can actually prevent the doomsday clock from going up is when you go into dungeon runs, open as many chests as you can, kill as many monsters as possible, and explore as much of the maps as you possibly can. Because when you do those things, those effects actually turn the doomsday clock dial back. So it kind of bucks the typical trend of not really, exploring dungeons to the fullest and just progressing to the next floor or whatever. Because if you do that, you're going to be killing yourself in the outside of the dungeons, not on the inside of the dungeons. It's an interesting little sticky wicket that make you fight things. Another thing that's interesting about this game, as far as monsters go, is that when you fight a monster and you win, you get rewards or whatever from them. And the monster disappears. But over a few turns, the monster can come back. And when the monster comes back, he gives you nothing if you fight it. Absolutely nothing. There is no reward. So the first time you see a monster, it's cool to fight it because, give you some boons, hook you with some loot. Beyond that, they are solely there to drain your energy and beat you down. They give you nothing for fighting them. So you want to avoid repeat battles in dungeons. I also like that there's like a weird aspect to it where there's like bushes you can hide in, and also monsters can hide in those bushes. So you can like say walk around, see a big monster starts chasing you. You can dive into the bushes and pass some turns. The monster might not know you went in and just move right on by. But by that same token, you can try to jump into the bushes. There's already a monster in there, and he beats the shit out of you. It's really cool like that. This is an awesome little number. I like that aspect of it. I like the fact that when you choose a dungeon, the game will tell you these are some of the major treasures you can find on this dungeon run. So you know kind of what you're getting into by choosing that dungeon floor to take on. And as you explore the floors, there are treasure chests lying around just like in any old roguelike game. But unlike typical roguelike games, you can't open any treasure chest without a key. So you have to find the key to the chest in the dungeon, then take the key back to the chest to open it up. Yeah, it sounds kind of jerky, but I think that's kind of the point in a game where taking steps drains your health. Or not your health, drains your hunger meter. And also, unlike a lot of other games, your luminosity meter. Luminosity is what lights the dungeons you're in. And the lower that bar gets, the darker it gets. Eventually, it gets so dark you can't see shit, and monsters can surprise and ambush you. This game is designed to really stack the deck against the player. And I kind of like that, because that's what you play roguelikes for. You play them to overcome crazy odds. But I like that aspect of it. Also, character death is permanent, too. If your characters die, you kind of recruit some other jerk from the guild and bring his ass out.
So permadeath, game save destruction, difficult game. This sounds like it just hates you.
It kind of does. It's pretty much anime Darkest Dungeon. It's great. It is great. But I honestly, like I said, I like the fact that it's there like that. I mean, there's an easy, normal, and hard mode, though. So there is an easy mode. I can't vouch for how easy is. I didn't play on that. But it does exist.
Mr. Man's Man over here playing it on hard.
Oh, kiss my ass. I played on normal. I was scared, too.
Pussy.
I love how you went from being Mr. Man's Man to pussy. Pick up your ball. I'm an average man. I stuck with normal.
You either try hard or die trying. Can't I just be average?
No.
This mode is for people who just like video games.
But, I think the big thing is when you're going through the dungeons and you run into a monster, do you have any characters that scream monster?
Not quite. However, the characters do sometimes have Japanese dialogue. They'll say "Oh, you might wonder how I look like a paladin, but trust me, I'm a true paladin. Time to show you." Or "My shield's not just for show," stuff like that. And one guy goes, "Oh, monsters." That was not true, but man, it'd be hilarious if it was.
Oh, Lord.
It's honestly, this game is an interesting bubble because I'm going to flat out say, even with the easy mode, if you're not in, it's almost like Driven Out last week. If you're not in for a challenging game, don't even freaking bother. The game was designed with the intent being to give you some work in a roguelike environment and structure. So, I'm not saying don't try it if you're not willing to give it a shot, but if you expect it to not give you a challenge, this may not be in your wheelhouse to try. But as a game that is just, making you work for those vittles and is actually just kind of cool in its own right, I think it's awesome. Another thing I need to probably mention that I totally forgot about is that so the character, like I said, the characters come in different classes. When you get characters, you can see every skill that they can learn and they can have, but they don't have all of those skills. And every character that you recruit, each one, even if they're the same class, won't have the same skills as the other. So you might have your first paladin that might have some shield smite, and the next time you get one, they might not have shield smite. Instead, they'll have provoke bash or something, which is a different skill. So you might be thinking, crap, I like my other paladin better. But the end result has to be, well, got this one now. Figure it out. She's your paladin now. Or you can just not bother with her and wait till a better paladin shows up at the guild. Hopefully you got enough time on that doomsday clock to ride it out, though.
Yeah, you'll die eventually.
You're all going to die. They all float down here in the vortex. But honestly, I think this game is definitely in my wheelhouse. And I think if you're the type that's been playing roguelikes for ages already, I feel like this might be an interesting kick in the pants for you on the roguelike journey too. If you like Darkest Dungeon, it's kind of a no-brainer too. It's anime Darkest Dungeon with a line format party system.
Nice. Well, overall, $30. Your verdict?
I think it's a quality buy. And I totally forgot to mention one other interesting kick in the pants the game does too. I should mention this just for jokes and giggles. So when they give you a bit of a tutorial at the beginning of the game, and they say, okay, when you enter a dungeon, you want to take food and luminosity boosters and energy and potions for healing. She gave you 5 of everything. We recommend you take 3, 3, and 3 at the minimum just to get your feet wet. So I took all those, went to the dungeon, got to the end, and did everything I wanted to do. Had leftovers, whatever, I'll take them out with me, and left the dungeon. Maybe it was part of the tutorial, intentional, but they said, oh, well, whenever you take food items into the dungeon, it becomes contaminated by the vortex. So now it all goes rotten.
No.
You can't even take healing items in with you and then take them out. They'll be contaminated. And any healing items
use it or lose it.
Yep. And any healing items you typically find, there are some exceptions, but any healing items you find in the dungeon will also be contaminated. So you can take them, but you might get sick. It's so weird.
Damn. Sounds like a cool game, though.
It is. I think it's really cool.
Oh, craft on. Why no Xbox on this one? It's on everything else. Damn it.
Time to roll them bones. They got to do it. Do it up.
Indeed. Well, Pernell, that's all for your reviews. Are you going to stick around or were you going to head out?
I'm going to try to stick around for maybe 1 or 2 more.
All right, because the next game to talk about is Sega Age's Ichidant-R, developed by M2, published by Sega, released October 17th on the Switch for $7.99. Originally released for Japanese arcades back in 1994, this unique spin-off from Bonanza Brothers features a compilation of wacky minigames that require sharp thinking and quick reflexes, all set in a fantasy medieval backdrop where you must save a princess from the Demon King, experience puzzle and action in this definitive party game. Chris, tell us about it.
All right, Ichidant-R. So this is, interestingly, I was never expecting to see this one because it is a part of a trilogy that came out in Japan only that was ported actually as Sega Ages a Sega Ages release. I don't think it was M2, but it was ported on the Sega Saturn. It came out on the Wii Virtual Console, and this Switch version is the first one that we are ever seeing in the US in English. Ooh. So I'm kind of happy about that.
Was the Virtual Console one in Japanese then?
Yeah, on the Japanese Switch, which of course, as everybody knows, it was a different time back then. You couldn't just go purchasing Japanese games on a Wii. I mean, come on.
Friggin' Nintendo.
Yeah, I know. It's funny how distant in the past that seems now, even though it's only been a scant few years. The Nintendo systems have been non-regional again. Anyways, okay, so Ichidant-R is it's basically set in a kind of medieval setting. It's also, everybody looks like they're basically toys. They're kind of like featureless and like cylindrical and spherical. And it's about a princess gets kidnapped by a big green knight who then says, "You must solve all the puzzles to rescue the princess," and then just like leaves with her. Like, it's very undramatic. He's just like, "Well, I'm taking this. You have to solve all the puzzles. All right, bye now." And then he just kind of heads out. And so it is up to your apparently nameless knight. There's no real story that I've been able to divine from this game apart from that, to go through several castles and defeat different guards and bosses and whatnot. And of course, the way he defeats them is through mini games. This will appear very familiar to like WarioWare fans, because it's very much in that micro mini games kind of vein. So basically, as you face off against another person, like 4 different icons will appear on the screen, and it will scroll between them. And of course, when you push the button, it stops on one of them, and then that's your mini game that you get to play. And the mini games range from really, really easy to actually kind of really hard. So something that might be easy, an example would be like a pencil sharpening game. So it'll like a pencil will go into like a sharpener, and then you're supposed to spin the stick as fast as you can to sharpen the pencil, and then do as many of those as you can. Most of the first stages only have like one thing. Like, as soon as you do it once, then you're done. But then it soon gets into like the more advanced stuff where you basically have to do everything 3 times. Sometimes it'll be like fish are swimming by, and it's like you have to count them, but the thing is that they're moving the whole time, so you kind of have to like really pay attention. And then like there's it's different things like that. Like memory games are in there, and a game that's basically where you have to just match up in a grid of about 16 cards with monkeys on them. You have to match up every pair of monkeys doing the exact same thing, and they're all doing something like similar. So, they're all just kind of going crazy, but you have to match the 2 that are, And then when you get into like later stages, it gets into like actual like brain puzzle stuff, like one where there's a persistent train on a track, and you have to guide it to gather coins by flipping like different blocks around that, like flip the tracks into like curves and like stuff like that, and like scroll through curves and everything while the train is perpetually moving. Otherwise it starts going backwards because it hit a wall or something. And then like, that's like a legit puzzle. Or like one where there's 4 lily pads and 4 frogs, and you have to stack 3 of the frogs, in a size of largest to smallest on a certain lily pad. You can move each frog around. The difference being that no frog can land on a frog that's smaller than it.
Yeah, so, I remember those puzzles from elementary school.
Yes, things like that. So, even though these are like micro mini games, the thing about them is that they're not as quick as a WarioWare kind of game. You're actually given something like anywhere between 15, 20 seconds, and then of course the timer starts to shrink as you get into later stages. But you're given like a whole ass timer to do it. And the other thing is that you're given a certain amount of lives, and those lives are chances that you actually get through the puzzle successfully, and you don't leave the puzzle if you die. You'll expend all of your lives on the same puzzle if you can't get it.
Man.
So you have to kind of figure out what games you're good at and hope that you don't land on something that you're terrible at, like that stupid train game, which I have not passed once. I have died on that hill every single time I've come across it. So, and then
Chris.
Yeah. But then, like I said, you defeat the guard and move on to the next stage, and usually it has a bonus where you get to, like, ride on a toy horse and, like, jump and grab coins, but don't get trapped in a bubble kind of stuff. Really cutesy and slightly absurd things like that, ad nauseum. So that's the game itself. Now, of course, this is an M2 Sega Aegis production, which means that it is going, like, when M2 puts out a Sega Aegis version of a game, it is usually the best way to play that game ever.
Yeah. M2 does not fuck around.
No. I can point to their Phantasy Star port as being like just the ultimate version of Phantasy Star, and I own every version of Phantasy Star. I love that game. I have it on Master System, Game Boy Advance. I have it on several like Sega compilations, but the Sega Aegis one is the one that I'm going to finally beat because like they added so much. So in this one, of course you've got the arcade, the actual arcade games. This is an arcade game. You can choose like different options, like adding a helper and things like that. You've got a of course, a manual and play replay where you can actually watch your whole gameplay back. It records the whole thing and you just, delete it if you don't want it.
Wow.
It has an online mode. You can actually play this game with people online. I tried and I couldn't find anyone, but that is a thing that you can do. So, if you're friends with me on Switch, let's get together and play this sometime, I guess. Of course, it has the save load features, which is really cool. It actually contains a full port of the Mega Drive game that came out in Japan initially. So this game came out for the Mega Drive, which is, of course, the Genesis in Japan. It is the exact same game. It's just a little bit stripped of some sound quality and, of course, voice samples, because there's voice samples in the game and they're terrible on the Genesis as that system is. The other thing is that the Genesis version, there's no attempt made to translate it, so it is all in Japanese. But it's there, which I think is really cool. And of course, as well as that, you also have the quality of life stuff that's in the actual game's menu, which, I actually kind of have to tell M that you should really make these menus more intuitive. Like, you have to pause it and then push the X button to go to a whole separate menu and then scroll around that with the shoulder buttons and like things like that to do stuff. But mainly it's that you can turn the difficulty to much easier if you like, and you can also put it, the international version being the English version that they released, and then you can put it back to Japanese if you really want to. Different things like that. But yeah, all in all, that's the game. I found it extremely fun. I actually really, really enjoyed this game. All the mini games are legitimately challenging. They're not just, time wasters or something that's just silly and amusing. Like, pretty much each of them had something to them that was like, it really felt like quality. Whereas a WarioWare game, I love WarioWare games. It's one of my favorite series. But, of course, some of the games are just insipid on purpose. Yeah. They're meant to be filler. But this game, I think, is a lot more legit and definitely feels more like the progenitor to things like that. So I quite enjoyed it.
$8 your verdict?
Yeah, $8. Go for it. You haven't played anything like this before, really, and certainly this longtime series has never seen a U.S. release. So go ahead and get on it. I don't think you're going to expect too many people to be online for those online matches. You're going to have to kind of arrange that yourself. Of course, you can create your own room, so that's the thing you can do. But yeah, go for this one. It's really fun, and it's funny, and, I don't like to say the word addicting, so I'm just going to say it's pretty hooky.
Hooky. That works.
Hooky.
This game is skipping school, if you know what I mean.
There you go. Yeah. You'll skip school to play this game.
Nice. Skip school, kids. Play video games instead.
Yeah.
It works. I've heard stories.
I think I'm going to buy this one. This one sounds really fun.
Yeah, I would say to buy this one for sure. And like I said, it's got all those different things like dot by dot perfect like screen resolution type stuff. A really cool background that you can also turn off. You can also stretch it out to be the size of your whole widescreen if you're a monster.
Yeah,
things like that. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, you got another Sega Ages game to talk about. This one is Columns 2, developed by M2, published by Sega, released October 17th on the Switch for $7.99. Match jewels, fossils, and discs as you take a voyage through time in the second installment of this fun and exciting puzzle series. Control the falling pieces and aim for 3 in a row in any direction to clear the screen before they stack to the top. Chris, this one seems pretty straightforward.
It is, but I did my homework anyway, so I could really talk about it.
Nice.
Yeah, so Columns 2 is, of course, the second game in Sega's popular answer to Tetris, which, of course, if you remember the 90s, you remember everybody had the falling block, puzzle game. Now, Columns, just to give a bit of a idea of what happens in it, you have a playing field, and then in that field you have dropping triplets, that is to say 3 jewels that are falling, and when you push the button, it basically puts those jewels in a different order. So if it's and you can put them in any you put them in any order that is consistent with the way that they are. So like if you push the button when the red one's on the bottom, then the red one will go into the middle, and the one that was above the one that was on the top will now be on the bottom. So it's kind of like turning it. And anyways, the whole point is to arrange them in such a way that you get 3 in a row to connect. That is to say, either horizontally, vertically, or diagonally. And ideally, you want them to fall into a place such that like they kind of fall into different combos and things like that. It's extremely easy to understand what's going on. It's extremely difficult to get good at.
Sounds a lot like Day and Night from earlier.
Yeah, exactly.
Easy to learn, difficult to master.
Yes.
Exactly, yeah.
By the way, you should play that, Chris.
I will. But yeah, and I'm a person who is very good at like Tetris Attack. So like I understand certain block games. I have mastered them before, but yeah, Columns is one of those that just befuddles me. I just lose a lot. So that's Columns 1 basically. So Columns 2 adds a whole different element to it in that it's kind of more Dr. Mario style, if you will, because when you go to play in the field is already either a third, half, or even 2/3 full of jewels already. And so you're dropping onto an existing playing field. And the point of the game is that there's, in the early stages, like 1 or 2, and then in the later stages, like 10 flashing jewels, and you have to eliminate those jewels. You have to dig your way down to them using combos and matches, and not filling up the screen too much, and you have to eliminate the ones that are flashing. This adds a whole nother layer of challenge to an already challenging puzzle game. And apart from that, it's basically you have, it says the tagline to it is the voyage through time. It just has 5 different themed levels that have like vague time themes. Like one's futuristic looking, one's primitive looking, one's kind of Roman looking, and then one is just like seashells and like squids and stuff, and it's not really explained why. That doesn't really matter. It's just that because the first game infamously only has 1 stage and 1 song, like this one has 5 stages and 5 songs. And as you clear stages, it just scrolls right through them. As soon as you're done with level 5, you start back over at level 1, and it's harder. You can do this up to 70 times.
Jesus.
Yeah, and I tried it on level 70. It's not fun. But it's fun to play, and so I do enjoy that part of it. It's one of those kind of things where you'll either get it or not get it. A lot of people, it doesn't take them very long to determine whether they're going to like Columns or not. So instead, I'm going to talk more about what the bonuses are in this, because it's actually pretty great. Another aspect to this one is that the stages are kind of timed, where after a little while, a skull will appear. And if you bust that skull, that is to say, if it's in the line, that you match up, then it causes the entire platform to raise by 1 level. And so that adds another challenge element to it. So in the M2 Sega Aegis version of this, you get the original Columns 2, of course, which is an arcade game. It had a Genesis port, but it's basically the same thing, but stripped down, as I said before. So this is the full-on arcade version. You can play it as original. You can also select the stage before you start playing, which is nice if you want to start on level 70, which you don't. Then it has a thing called Skull Smash, which I didn't check out, but I assume that that's just going to be like trying to clear all the skulls. It then has an Infinite Jewels mode where you can play 2 more like the first game is played. Like as soon as you clear it, it doesn't actually move on the stage. You just keep playing it until you clear everything, and you just keep going and try to get the highest score. And then it also has online mode. So if you happen to have friends that you want to play Columns with, then instead of Mario Kart, then certainly you can do that. Has save load, has all the, different quality of life things. And I actually had no idea about this until just tonight. It also has a full-on port of the first Columns game in there.
Nice.
Yeah, it's just right there in the options. It's the first Columns game as it appears on the Sega Genesis.
Damn.
Which, that's also the version that they put on the Sega Mini. So now I have 2 versions of this game I've never owned before.
Huh.
So, yeah.
Well, $8, your verdict?
$8, it's Columns, and I think that you'll know whether you're going to like it or not, but the fact that it comes with also the first Columns game is pretty darn good. If you want to play Columns, again, yeah, this is M2, and this is going to be the best way to play Columns 2, and that is to say with all these extra modes, all these quality of life things, and also just all the first game in there, too. So you can just, try it any way you want.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Right. Want to know what else is really cool? The fact that Vertically Impaired rated us and then subbed for his 20th month.
Woo!
Wow.
That is a lot of mistakes. That's a lot of regret, a lot of sadness.
You've really committed to effing up.
Yes.
I also like the fact that this conveniently was done by a guy named Vertically Impaired when you're just talking about a game where pieces only descend vertically.
That's true. It is very true.
I am horizontally impaired because I am super wide.
Super wide, powerful. I'm stuck. I want to say.
Anyway, Chris, you got one last game to talk about, and that is Pixel Gladiator, developed by Flying Islands team, published by Dragius Games, released October 25th on the Switch for $6.99. Defend and upgrade your base, grab big weapons, and build deadly turrets to slaughter waves of furious creatures. Chris, again, sounds straightforward enough.
It is, yes. So this game is basically where you have a base in the center of a playing field. You have your little guy that runs back and forth, and it's basically controlled a little bit like a twin stick shooter. So you run and actually also jump with the left stick. So, you push up to actually jump, which I normally hate, but I actually liked it in this game. And then, you have your right stick that moves a reticle around, and with that reticle, you basically shoot enemies, whether they are on the ground or in the sky or in your eye. And so the whole thing about it is that basically from your base, you can then choose when you want the next wave to happen. So it's not perpetual. You always have a resting point between waves. And what I like about this game, and this is what I hate about a lot of other tower defense games, is that it gives you a nice gradual difficulty curve. The first wave of enemies is literally just 2 guys running slowly at you from each side. And so you run and kill them, and then you're good. And then the next wave is like 4 guys. And, it takes a while for it to get like actually really hard and challenging, and you never feel like super panicked because you always, like I said, get that break between stages where you get your life automatically refills. You have a life bar where you can only take so many hits, and your weapons are actually infinite ammo. They just have to be reloaded. So you start off with a pistol with like 20 bullets in it, and when you shoot those 20 bullets, it just you have to cool down for about 3 seconds. And I'm sorry, that sounded like 33 seconds. It wouldn't be 30. I would not like this game. And
that would be a long time.
Yeah, exactly. And then you get back to shooting. And in your default weapon, you actually have like a pistol that is a slow shot in your right hand, and then with the left trigger, you can actually do this close range electrical attack that kills things really effectively, but it takes the equivalent of 3 bullets. So you can only use it like a few times before you have to reload that one. Now, of course, this being a tower defense game, the whole point of it is to earn money and get bigger guns. The interesting thing about this, and again, this is a design choice that I praise. You earn money by defeating enemies. However, you can't earn any money on a defeated enemy until it's in range of a camera that's going to be on either side of your base. So they have to get within a certain distance of danger, of being a danger to you, in order for you to get rewarded for fighting them. And the closer they get, the more reward you get.
Oh,
so yeah, so you actually get reward. Yeah, you get actually significant, not insignificantly, let's say, rewarded for basically letting the enemy sort of get close enough to you to be like a real danger. And of course, once the game does get difficult, that's going to be all the enemies because they're going to be very powerful and moving very fast. The range of weapons is like a lot of the stuff you'd expect. Of course, you get a fast firing machine gun, and at that point, you can shoot some slower, powerful shots, or you can put on the left trigger and just go like, and like, just unload a bunch of bullets and then have to like sit there and reload. It actually, both strategies are good for different kinds of enemies. Some are larger and slower, and some are coming at you really quickly, but can be taken down really quickly. The other thing, of course, is that you can build turrets on either side of your base. You start with just the armored turrets, which the enemy has to break before they can get past them. And of course, like I said, the instant they reach the center of the screen, it's game over. So that's, there's no leeway there. So thus, you do have to build the defense perimeters. And once they're built, they have shelves, and those shelves are where the turrets go. Now, you can purchase turrets however you want. You can load them up with turrets or whatever, but if the base gets destroyed, or if the barricade gets destroyed, it takes the turrets down with it. So you kind of have to like manage your resources really cleverly there and determine like whether those shots are really going to stop the enemy fire, or whether you need to invest your money elsewhere. Let's say in a drone to follow you around and shoot enemies while you're shooting them, because there's several different drones you can get. You can even get a mech suit, but it's very expensive, so I haven't gotten one yet. But the game actually gives you a lot of like different options, and it divides them into 3 different arenas, which I guess have 3 different sort of layouts. And then they have an overarching survival mode, which just starts you like with kind of everything there in the middle, that you actually have to repair an upgrade bench to even start upgrading your stuff, and you can then go from there. Like I said, what I really enjoy about this game is the fact that it's actually, you really feel motivated to keep playing it even after you get so many game overs, because, you can actually, I can get through about 7 waves of enemies before I even buy one upgrade. So it's kind of nice that I'm actually able to save money to buy a much better gun before I buy like the crappy, slightly better gun, Yeah. So I really like that's an aspect of it. The other thing that's kind of cool is that right now, I think it's like as maybe a temporary Halloween thing, they drop in this pumpkin head upgrade for free into the game in survival mode. So
nice.
As soon as it puts a pumpkin on your head, and you get a 15% bonus for money just across the board. And I thought that was kind of cute to be running and gunning. The other thing I really like, and I haven't gotten to this yet, is that while the enemies are all kind of like, they're sort of purple and kind of what you'd expect, like some alien guys running, and some of them are bigger and clunkier, and some of them are like flying kind of ball squid things, stuff that you'd normally see. Occasionally you will run into a boss, and the bosses are really big and spectacular, and they really range. Like there's a UFO like creature kind of thing, looks like from a Contra game, that comes and attacks you. There's a tall skeleton lich that comes at you with a whole bunch of other like skeleton bad guys, and like that's just kind of out of left field. And they're actually like the pixel art's really good on these bosses, especially even if they're not super impressive on the character, because the game overall has a small look to it. So kind of conservative with the pixels. But when it comes to the bosses, they really went the extra yard. So I was actually quite pleased with this game for what it was. I was expecting it to be a lot more sort of cut and paste generic stuff, but I actually am really enjoying this one.
Nice. So overall, $7. What do you think?
Yeah, $7 is a good price for an indie game like of this caliber for sure. I think you'll be playing it a lot, and I will say not a lot of people are playing it right now because I'm currently number 4 on the leaderboards worldwide.
Well, because it didn't come out yet.
Oh, is it not out yet at all?
25th.
Okay, well on the 25th you can take me down. I got a very middling high score that is the 4th best in the world at the moment.
And I saw it will be on Xbox One as well. I'm not sure if it'll be on PS4, but I would assume so. If not, oh well, it's on Switch and Xbox at least. I know that for sure.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, Chris, Pernell, that is it for you two. Thanks to the both of you for being here, chatting with us. Pernell, thanks for being on that interview earlier.
That was a good time. No problems.
That was a good time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think I worked out prior to that even. I don't know what fumes I'm running on right now, but
I don't know either. But
laundry fumes.
Cole and I still have more to do, so we're going to let you two go. Do you have any final words, guys?
Sleep, Sonora. Keep your pillow time.
I'm just going to say, Monsters!
Monsters!
Monster!
That's the best thing ever. Do you remember that show? Real Monsters.
I like that show.
I love
the dude with the eyeballs in his hands.
Yes. That probably explains a lot about me if that was my childhood.
We have the same childhood then. Same fucked up childhood.
Explains a lot about this show.
Yes, it does.
So what's next?
Next up is Megaquarium, developed by Twice Circled, published by Auroch Digital, released October 18th on Xbox One, Switch, and PS4 for $24.99. A theme park management tycoon game with an aquatic twist. Design your displays, look after your fish, manage your staff, and keep your guests happy. All in a day's work as the curator of your very own Megaquarium. Cole, tell us about it.
You know how I have to delete these kind of management strategy games because I get too hooked on them?
Is this 3 in a row?
I didn't delete it yet. You okay over there? You gonna die
fine.
on me?
I'm fine. I just have a cough.
Let's talk about Megaquarium because this is a management tycoon type. It's like if you took a management simulator at Zoo Tycoon, but you made it with an aquarium with fish, then that's basically what you've got here. It's from, now I can't think of the proper term for that camera angle, but it starts with an I.
Isometric?
Yes! Thank you. I don't know why I wanted to say isotopic. I need drugs.
So do I.
Isometric camera angle. You cannot get a top-down angle unless you're expanding your aquarium, but most of it's from an isometric view. The game has a sandbox mode, obviously, as any one of these type of tycoon games does have, but it also has a campaign which has you going through 10 different scenarios. One may be, for example, that you are in a neighborhood that only wants you to keep things limited and small. So you may only be allowed to have one type of each fish. Or
that would be a shitty aquarium to have one of each fish. Just one.
Can I just talk about the struggle of trying to do that when some of the fish require being in groups of 4 or more? You can forget those fish. You're not putting those motherfuckers in your aquarium because they will die. And that is one of the biggest aspects of the game is that every type of fish has requirements. And you can completely get lost trying to remember, oh, this fish will eat that fish. This fish has to be in a certain type of tank. The sharks, for example, move constantly, so they can't be in tanks that have corners because they'll get stuck. They have to be in rounded tanks. Certain fish are active swimmers, and so they need bigger aquariums, whereas other ones can deal with small ones. Some will eat a fish, but only if it's up to a certain size. Some of them are bullies. Some of them are wimps and like freak the fuck out if you put them in with other types of fish. The good news is that the game is incredibly good at giving you all those details. And if you set it too easy, which I recommend, then even when you're building, it will highlight a tank and be like, you can't put this here, it's going to get eaten. Mm-hmm. That's incredibly useful. If you put it on a higher difficulty, you're losing fish constantly because you will forget where the fuck you can't put them. It's just like, good luck to you if you want to put that tiny little crab in with a giant shark. And I'm like, I do. And then it's dead. Aww. And then I'm like, and then I'm sitting there like, it sends you autopsy reports. And they might as well just say, because you're a dumbass. Like, it'll tell you, Tiger Shark Bob ate Crustacean Joe. And then you're sad. And basically it's because you were not smart enough to not put them in together. I love that kind of element, though, that you have to really think about how you're going to put everything together. Some fish need for the tanks to be cool. Some of them need for the tanks to be hot. Some of them are tropical, and so then the tank has to be a certain level of heated over how big it is. There's a little bit of math involved, but again, if you're playing on easy, like, it just tells you, yes, this is suitable, or no, it's not, jackass. Try again. For the sake of the achievements, the game is actually really easy to complete, which is a surprise, because this kind of game is usually like...
Yeah, they're usually brutal to finish.
The death. But this one... If you complete the challenges and basically just grow the fish, the most you might have to do is trade fish, and there's only like 1 or 2 of the campaign levels that allow you to actually trade. So you might have to like replay those twice or something to get the trading achievement. But the other ones are, I mean, they're just going to come from playing the campaign, which I was really surprised by. And again, there's no difficulty. Like, it doesn't punish you if you want it to tell you that you can't put, don't put a clownfish in with a shark. Watch Nemo, you jackass. Doesn't go well. But it looks really good. I was really surprised at like how much detail it goes into the fish, because you can zoom in pretty close on them and you can see a lot about them. I actually played in sandbox mode for a little while, and I just made one tiny little aquarium and like watched it forever. But the fish in the tanks, they're only the start. You have to run an aquarium like a business. So you need to research different elements to your aquarium. Like, I lost my train of thought.
Proud of you.
It's me doing what I do. Like, you can have a balloon stand, for example, and then you can have
balloon stand.
Yeah, you can have a balloon stand. You can, your customers are going to get hungry and thirsty traipsing around a giant aquarium if you're doing it right. So you need to research vending machines. You can put vending machines in, and then eventually you can get a coffee maker and you can get a popcorn stand. So you can gradually build up and just make it a more enjoyable experience. But in addition to that, you also need to hire and manage your staff. Some of the people are going to be really good at talking, and so you might want somebody who can stand at a podium and give a really cool talk. And then that will help you earn more prestige, which then, upgrades higher levels and lets you unlock more fish or more equipment. It's surprisingly in-depth. I did have the game crash on me, and this leads to my biggest complaint. I can tolerate the occasional crash, okay?
Yeah, it happens.
That's
gaming today.
But there's no autosave.
Oh, no.
I was on the 7th campaign mission. Now, I had been smart, and I had saved each of my previous campaigns, because they're individual. They unlock individually as you complete them. And then you can either carry on with that aquarium, or you can start a new one for the next campaign. And so I had saved every single one of them up to that point after I would meet all the goals without realizing that there was no autosave. Well, when I got to number 7, I was literally minutes from completing the goal. And then the game just does that sound.
No. My head is on my microphone right now, just out of sadness.
And it just stopped. And I'm like, oh no. Oh no.
Oh man.
Oh no.
How much time did you lose?
About 2 hours.
Oh.
I lost the entire mission 7.
Dear
aquarium
twice circled, please implement autosave.
Please. Because I get, instill a little bit of difficulty, force you to, even if it's not for the sake of difficulty, even if it's just to give you the option, because you can't undo and stuff. But maybe if it's just they wanted to give you that option, I can understand, but games are not stable enough to let that happen. And if you want to allow manual saves, make them just separate from the autosave.
Yeah.
Let the autosave be labeled it's an autosave, but please just give me an autosave so that I don't lose 2 hours when I'm at the cusp of completing an objective. And 7 is not an easy one either. It's you have to have these specific sharks, but you have to meet different criteria to get each shark unlocked. And you can only get them through trades. You can't just research them and buy them.
Oh man.
And so it was just, I wanted to sob. I did have some other moments where the game got a little laggy when there were a lot of customers, or I had really expanded out and made this huge aquarium and just had tons of people in it and tons of fish. It would get a little on the framey side, but nothing compares to losing that entire campaign mission.
Yeah.
And I've been so brokenhearted ever since. And I'm just well, I haven't deleted it, but I also kind of didn't need to because it broke my heart.
That's a soul crusher. I was playing Two Worlds, the original Two Worlds on 360, and that didn't have an autosave. And it was a manual save. And I was playing, I saved the game, I was doing some missions and exploring. I wasn't doing any quests, any of the main quests. It was just all side stuff.
Yeah.
So I didn't bother really saving it because nothing important happened.
Right.
Game crashed. About 3 hours gone.
Oh.
Haven't touched it since.
It does just knock you out of it when that happens. But besides that, I was...
you Two Worlds!
I mean... Besides the lack of an autosave, I couldn't complain about anything in this game. I just absolutely adored it.
Well, then for $24.99, what is your verdict?
I'm gonna tentatively say buy it because it is good and it does what it wants to do well. And I would love to see more tycoon type games that just kind of break the mold and are something unusual like an aquarium. I thought it was great. I just want an autosave because games crash.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm gonna say buy it with that hanging in the air over it.
So hopefully they will patch it and add that in.
That would be nice.
Yeah. Anyway, we got one final game to talk about tonight. Oh my God, it's been a long one. Last game is called Soul, developed and published by Gossamer Games, released October 16th on the Xbox One for $14.99. Uncover the secrets of a world lost in shadow in this stunning emotional journey. Cole, what is Soul?
Good question. This is one of those games that is an experience. You're just supposed to sit back and relax and explore. If it weren't for the fact that you're controlling a little orb of light, this would be a walking simulator. That's not a negative thing. It's just that's the type of gameplay that you're
That's
looking
the genre,
at here.
pretty much.
There's no puzzles. There's very little story. There is the concept that you play as the very last spark of light, and the rest of the world has become shrouded in darkness. And so as you explore, you are shining a little bit of light. You will occasionally interact with beacons that will shine a light, open a door. Sometimes your presence is just enough to pop one open. But it's basically just kick back, relax, and explore, look around.
It's a very relaxing game.
Yeah. The soundtrack, I don't think that there's more than 1 or 2 songs that play, but it suits it so well, and like it's just so relaxing that you don't get annoyed at the loop of it. It's just like, well, it's there, and it would feel weird without it, but it's not something that you're like, oh, I have to listen to this. I have to go buy a soundtrack for this. It's just something that's relaxing and calming and there, even in its minimalism. The art style I really enjoyed. It's somewhat like a low poly watercolor effect. I thought it was really cool how they had played it out. There's a little bit of an impressionist look and feel to it, but it's definitely that low poly aesthetic. It's easy to have that kind of art style and get to a point where like everything looks the same and it's kind of hard to tell where you are or where you're going. But I didn't feel like Soul fell into that at all. The areas that you are exploring through, they have very distinct appearances. Yeah. But it's very simple.
I was looking up the soundtrack. The soundtrack actually is available to buy.
Is it?
Yeah, there's 14 tracks. It's $7 available on Bandcamp. Yeah.
They don't sound overwhelmingly different then.
Well, if you listen to the whole thing.
Maybe like listening it as opposed to listening to it in the game.
Yeah, the composer is
different.
I'm sure I'm going to butcher this name, but Nabil Ansari, I believe.
That is seriously like the most relaxing game soundtrack I've ever heard.
Yeah. Soul is my debut soundtrack as a game composer, so.
Well, kudos. I hope he doesn't think I was being negative. But just as far as the sake of the game goes, like when you're listening to it, and maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe it's good that it like flows together so seamlessly that you don't notice you're going from song to song.
Possible.
Maybe.
It's just one cohesive soundtrack.
Yeah. But it's seriously it's one of those where you're so relaxed you'll feel like you could piss yourself because you're just like,
Are you admitting to something on the show?
No, I only do that when I sneeze.
I mean, we did figure that out in Jackbox the other day.
Yep. Sneezing is dangerous.
Oh, my Lord.
I thought it was great for just a relaxing, chill game to just explore and look through. And it's short and sweet. Sometimes you just need a palate cleanser game. That's what Soul is.
Nice.
And that's not a bad thing. That's absolutely not. Like, you can only shoot and maim and hack and slash for so long before you just need to light up the world a little bit.
Exactly. So for $15, what's your verdict on Soul?
That price is a little high. I am still going to give it a try, though. Maybe wait for a sale because it's a short game. You can roll through the whole thing in maybe about an hour and a half, 2 hours. So that's kind of a high price for a short game.
Well, there are elements to explore and hidden symbols to find and stuff like that.
But even looking for and not using a guide, I was still under the 2 hour mark, and I was like finding all of the things.
Nice.
So it's I'm gonna give it a very highly recommended try it. It played beautifully. I enjoyed it. It's just that the price seems a little steep for the amount of time you'd be playing it. Because you're not going to go back to it after you do it, is the thing.
Yeah. Well, the good thing is you can bring that up on the next episode of the show when Gossamer Games is going to be on.
You mean we're going to do this again?
Yes.
Shit! Damn. Yeah. I guess we'll see you next week then. No, wait. Not even next week. Damn.
Tomorrow. I mean, 2 days. I mean, whatever. I don't know.
What day is it again?
Well, this comes out on Thursday, and we record on Thursday.
We do this whole show in one fell swoop. There is no editing magic here.
Zero editing. Zero editing at all.
Nailed it.
I'll see you one last time for you. Then we really have to go. You've been the only thing that's right in all I've done. And I can only look at you. And every single time I do, I know we'll make it anywhere away from here. Light up, as if you have a choice. Even if you cannot hear my voice, I'll be right beside you, dear. Louder, and we'll run for our lives. I can hardly speak, I understand why you can raise your voice to say. To think of not seeing those eyes, it makes it so hard not to cry. And as we say